Good morning, everyone. I'm calling this hearing to order. For the record, my name is Kendra Lara, and I am the District 6 City Councilor and the Chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks. This hearing is being live streamed at boston.gov/TV-council/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.ep@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will also be taken at the end of this hearing. If you are interested in testifying virtually, please email Cora Montrond, they're missing an end here, at Cora, CORA.Montrond, MONTROND, at boston.gov for the link. Today's hearing is on docket number 1385 in order for a hearing on stormwater management and flood hazard mitigation in the city of Boston. This matter was sponsored by Councilors Braden and Durkin, who are sitting here with me today, and it was referred to this committee on August 30th of 2023. And I am joined this morning by my colleagues, Councilor Braden from District 9, Councilor Sharon Durkin from District 8, Councilor Gabriela Coletta from District 1, Councilor Aaron Murphy at large, and Council President Ed Flynn from District 2. We are going to give a moment for my council colleagues to give opening statements before we hand over the floor to the panel. And because of time constraints, we're actually going to start out of order. So Councilor Coletta, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to go first. And I'm very grateful to my council colleagues, Burden and Jerkin, for allowing me to sign on as third co-sponsor. I do have to run, but you all know that this is a topic that will affect my district, something that I've been working on with you all individually to discuss. Severe weather systems are happening on a more frequent basis. We see this every time there's a king flood in my district, and it's directly related to changing climate. And so we need to be proactive. And my opinion, what I've been saying, is that Boston should be leading on this. And unfortunately, while there is incredible work happening out of Kate England's shop in the Environment Department, we are not. The goal should be to prioritize permeable spaces as much as possible. This happens on an ad hoc basis with the BPDA under small and large project review. However, I do think that we need to have a holistic plan in place and to really understand how we are able to meet the sea, to be able to take in water in terms of that sort of coastal flooding, but also the storm surge, which I know is a huge issue in the city of Boston. I do want to make sure that all of the resources that we're discussing to make this happen is not prioritized in neighborhoods that are loudest and truly protecting some of our most vulnerable. So I'm very excited to have this hearing taking place. I'm so sorry that I have to run, but I will have a staff member watching and taking notes, and we'll follow up with any questions that I might have. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. President Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And like Councilor Coletta, I also have to leave early. A friend, colleague of mine, is getting sworn into the Army, so it's an honor to join her for this ceremony. I want to say thank you to the sponsors for bringing this forward. Also want to recognize the important work that the Boston Water and Sewer Commission do and the Groundwater Trust Commission, the work you do, Christian, as well. I had the opportunity to recommend Councilor Durkin to be part of that committee, and I know she's doing an excellent job, even though she's only been there a couple months now. But what I wanted to highlight is it's critical that we work together, support residents that need assistance, technical support, but it's about working together, addressing these important issues. But I am confident, and I do know the professional staff at the Water and Sewer Commission will continue to work with various city departments on this critical issue. Thank you to the sponsors.
Thank you so much, President Flynn. And now we're going to hear, going back to order, we're going to hear opening statements from the sponsors, and then Councilor Murphy will hear an opening statement from you. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my co-sponsors for co-sponsoring this hearing, and also thank you to all our panelists, both from the administration and from our advocates this morning. The reality is that climate change is here now. We don't have any doubts about that. This summer, stormwater management it became a critical issue in places that we maybe hadn't thought about it too much lately. And it is a critical issue for our residents across Boston. I fully recognise the risk of sea level rise and storm surges along our coastline, but our inland neighbourhoods are also at risk. This summer, we witnessed intense precipitation. More than once, we saw 2 inches of rain falling in 2 hours, and we saw what happened in Leominster and in New York City recently. This is our new reality, increased frequency of intense rainstorms. In Alston Brighton, heavy rainfall flooded Commonwealth Avenue. It shut down the T, and we had cases of below-grade apartments flooding. In one case, a below-grade bedrooms were flooded with 4 feet of water when window wells filled up and the windows gave way. Thankfully, no one was injured. Increased precipitation in short periods of time is the new norm, and I hope this hearing will raise awareness for all of these climate challenges and prompt us to take action. We know that the FEMA maps, the flood maps, are not a good predictor of risk, and our zoning needs to reflect this new reality. We need to preserve and expand permeability on our lots. We cannot pave over everything and expect a good outcome. We need to be more diligent about where we permit below-grade living spaces. We need to incentivise green infrastructure in the private space and in public spaces as well. Inland neighbourhoods are at risk, and I look forward to this discussion this morning and hope that we can help mitigate the impacts of climate change to ensure that Boston is a safe and livable city for all. And thank you all for being here this morning, and I really look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so
Madam
much,
Chair.
Councillor Braden. Councillor Durkin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. With increasingly common and intense rain events that are causing localized inland flooding, the absolute necessity of building and retrofitting our city with resilient green infrastructure is more and more evident. Thank you to Councillor Braden for your leadership on this topic, and Councillor Coletta for your partnership. As a new councillor, this was the very first piece of legislation that I co-sponsored because of the significance of the challenge and the necessity of a prompt and comprehensive city response to it. I see housing and climate resiliency as the most pressing problems for our city, and these happen to go hand in hand when we're talking about stormwater management and flood hazard mitigation, especially on a day like today, where my short walk from Beacon Hill included passing several basement units with water pooling around the door, a couple of plugged storm drains, and an awareness for how this will impact the Charles River. However, my commute also involves passing 2 urban parks, a community garden, and of course, our new City Hall Plaza. With clean catch basins, permeable pavers, and appropriate grading, these positive elements of my commute highlight just how attainable and effective green infrastructure is if we prioritize it. I know progress is not simple and involves many players, but this progress is possible, and I'm so grateful to join my council colleagues in speaking with Boston Water and Sewer Commission, the Director of Green Infrastructure, and many advocates on this topic. I was proud to meet with some of you early in my tenure on the council, and I'm really excited to join in this conversation. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Councillor Durkin. It looks like we lost Councillor Murphy. We have a letter of absence from Councillor at Large Ruth Z. Louisan that I will read into the record. Dear committee, I regret to inform you that I will be unable to attend the hearing on docket number 1385, a hearing to discuss stormwater management and flood hazard mitigation in the city of Boston. In the wake of record rainstorms and waterfall in the last few years, Boston must continue to invest in green stormwater infrastructure. Stormwater overflows not only comprise public health potential, sparking outbreaks of waterborne diseases, but they also adversely impact the environment, often resulting in events like fish kills and closed beaches. Boston is lagging significantly in comparison to other cities by continuing to rely on traditional stormwater infrastructure, and thus we must accelerate our use of green stormwater infrastructure in order to meet our climate resilience goals. The system's capacity is further strained by Boston's growing population and construction and increased paved surfaces, which escalate runoff value. Recognizing these challenges, Boston must make proactive steps by investing in green stormwater infrastructure, including nature-based solutions and modern construction requirements, such as permeable ground cover. These sustainable approaches not only minimize the risk of overflows, but also align with the city's commitment on environmental justice by protecting both its residents and the environments most in need. My staff will be attending and I will thoroughly review the video, hearing minutes, and public testimony. Should you or any member of the public have any questions or concern, please do not hesitate to reach out to my office directly, and you can find Councilor Legend's phone number and email on the City of Boston website. So we're going to get started. We're going to start with the community panelists for this hearing. Now, do you have a specific order in which you would like to present? Beautiful. Great. Can you please, all of you, introduce yourself for the record before you get started? You have the floor.
Yep, I'm Rachel Bowers from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Ann Herbst from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Emily Norton, Charles River Watershed Association.
Christian Simonelli, Boston Groundwater Trust.
You have the floor.
Good morning, Chair Lara, Councilor Durkin, Vice Chair Braden, and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting MAPC to testify today. I'm Rachel Bowers, a data analyst at MAPC who, along with Ann Herbst, co-authored this research and reporting on regional stormwater flooding, which was released this past spring. We're grateful for the opportunity to share some of the findings and recommendations from that work with you all today. Next slide. So at MAPC, we have been acutely aware that stormwater flooding, or flooding from precipitation like rain and snowmelt, is a big issue in our region. And we know it will get worse as larger storms have and will continue to increase in frequency and intensity due to climate change. Just this year, as Councilor Braden mentioned, we've seen examples of these impacts in the northeastern US with catastrophic flooding in Vermont, in Leominster, and in New York City in the summer and fall. But unlike coastal flooding, we have never had great data or information about where exactly people experience the worst impacts of urban stormwater flooding. And therefore, we don't know where people and businesses should be prepared and resourced to withstand it. So about 5 years ago, we started on a journey to seek out this missing information about stormwater flooding across Greater Boston. Next slide. So this takes us back to March of 2010, when during a series of storms over 17 days, almost 18 inches of rainfall flooded roads, overtopped dams, washed out MBTA train tracks, and inundated homes and businesses, ultimately resulting in a federal disaster declaration. The disaster declaration allowed impacted residents to apply for relief funds through FEMA, regardless of whether they had flood insurance. To support our climate and hazard mitigation planning, and with support from DCR and MEMA, MAPC got access to the resulting FEMA disaster and flood insurance claims data from those storms. Next slide. Getting access to flood claims data meant we now had a record of where residents in the region experienced precipitation-induced flooding during this particular series of storms. So you can see that on this slide where we've mapped locations of every flood claim location in Greater Boston. And I want to take a moment to note that the reason our work focused on these storms is not that March 2010 is the only time stormwater flooding has occurred. It's just the only information and data that we have at this scale for where people have experienced flooding during rain events. And even so, this information most certainly underestimates the flooding and damage that occurred. Next slide. So we analyzed these 2010 floodplain locations and found that in the communities that had the most rainfall, upwards of 1 out of every 15 homes experienced some amount of flood damage. The vast majority of flooding was for depths of 6 inches or less, so often basement flooding with potential impacts to utilities, below-grade residents, and general economic, health, and safety consequences. But the biggest takeaway from our analysis is that only 7% of all flood locations in Greater Boston were in FEMA's 1% chance flood zones, commonly known as 100-year flood zones. This is a big deal because FEMA maps are the primary source of flood risk information for communities and individuals. So most officials and residents were unprepared for the widespread flooding that occurred outside flood zones. This also means that almost all of the flooding occurred in areas not covered by flood protection regulations. Next slide. These findings are mirrored in Boston, as seen on this map, where we have flood locations in comparison to FEMA flood zones. Of the 1,864 flood claims filed in Boston in March of 2010, fully 98% were in areas understood to be not in a flood zone, according to FEMA maps. And in truth, FEMA's flood modeling isn't designed to capture urban flooding from precipitation like what we saw in March of 2010 and what we continue to experience. So residents continue to be unaware of their risk to stormwater flooding and therefore continue to be unprepared. And in Boston, where flooding was concentrated in environmental justice communities in Mattapan and Dorchester, this has potential to cause even deeper impacts and inequities. And I'll pass it along to Anne.
Next slide.
I'd like to mention the in-depth analysis we did in the city of Woburn. I think it's relevant for Boston. While Woburn had a higher rate of claims than most of our communities, this map is fairly typical and not unlike Boston in that claims are spread across the city with occasional clusters, and they're largely unconnected to water bodies. As part of the project, we interviewed over 40 residents. We learned a lot from the interviews. The first is that most people were unaware of their flood risk and therefore unprepared. That meant they tended to suffer the most significant damage in their first storm. After the first flood, most took steps to protect their homes. Unfortunately, most also reported that their efforts helped to manage flooding but did not resolve it. We did the interviews in the fall of 2021. Despite our focus on the 2010 storms, over half of our interviewees reported recent flooding. Rainfall in Woburn in 2021 was nothing like March 2010. It was really more like this summer, lots of rain, but no federal disaster. That highlighted to us the frequency of flooding happening in storms that don't rise to the level of declared disasters. Almost all interviewees reported basement seepage, typically related to high groundwater and yard ponding, or in a few cases, street overflow. Only one reported overland flooding from a stream. This highlights the ubiquity of groundwater flooding affecting residents, not an issue that's gotten a lot of attention in our region. Perhaps most striking was the depth of emotional and financial stress people reported. Flood damage creates health risks and generally upends lives, as reported to us by our interviewees.
Next slide.
Before I talk about our report's recommendations, I want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work Boston has already done. I'm most familiar with the work of the Boston Water and Sewer Commission because I have the honor of serving on the Conservation Commission with John Sullivan. I know he'll report on a lot of the work that they've been doing, and in addition to that, I see the detailed review he provides for the projects that come before the Commission. We've learned that FEMA maps aren't capturing stormwater flooding and that residential flooding is a chronic issue for many residents. From our work in the region, we know that this is largely unrecognized and that unlike flooded roadways and public spaces, it's a problem that typically falls outside of anyone's obvious responsibility. And as always, we know that residents with fewer resources will be more impacted. Flooding is going to happen more frequently as the climate warms. Challenges managing flooding are inevitable given our urbanized environment. Solutions need to focus on reducing the incidence of flooding, but also on reducing the amount of flood damage that occurs when floods happen, and on supporting recovery from flood events. Reducing flood damage requires outreach and education about flood risk and protection strategies and practical support for property protection. The strategies I'll talk about are focused in these three areas and include federal, state, and local actions. Next slide. And another slide, sorry. Thank you. Our first recommendations focus on identifying risk. Federal privacy requirements strictly limit access to disaster and flood insurance claims. To comply with privacy requirements, we cannot share our claims data with local officials, and the claims have to be mapped in a way that assures no individual property is identified. Violations of the Privacy Act are subject to fines of up to $5,000 for each instance. The privacy requirements privilege the rights of current property owners over the needs of communities and individuals to understand and address flooding risk. As part of the next update to the National Flood Insurance Program, Congress should revise the Privacy Act to make data available. FEMA is a critical source of funding for flood mitigation grants. Yet without access to the claims, cities are missing information that can identify risk and the data that could support the benefit cost analysis required for successful applications. At the state level, Massachusetts is one of only 15 states that has no requirement to disclose flood history when selling property. Massachusetts should adopt a law that requires sellers to reveal flood history. In addition, New York just adopted a law that requires landlords to reveal flood history to renters. This can be especially important for tenants in basement apartments where flooding is more likely and flood insurance is not provided under the National Flood Insurance Program. MAPC will be exploring options for legislative adoption of flood disclosure requirements, and we welcome partners in that effort. While federal privacy requirements remain a barrier, there's a lot that can be done at the local level to identify and share flood risk information. Working with the City of Woburn,
We developed a map that included fire department log calls for water problems, the 2010 claims, sump pump, and interviewee locations. We developed web materials and a brochure with flood risk and property protection strategies. The brochures are available in their conservation planning and inspectional services departments. The point at which residents and contractors connect with the city for development permits is an opportunity to encourage flood-resistant practices. When residents are replacing or upgrading utilities, we should encourage replacement above ground or at a minimum elevated within basements. This is especially timely given the current focus on installation of energy-efficient utilities. It just really doesn't make sense to put new utilities back in harm's way. Next slide. Secondly, we need to provide support to prepare for and recover from flooding. Residents will need assistance to afford retrofits for their properties. In 2021, Congress adopted the STORM Act that provides funding for states to establish revolving loan funds. The program can support mitigation projects, including providing match for FEMA grants, and it targets funding to underserved communities. 7 states and Washington, D.C. have already taken advantage of the program. MEMA should apply for the STORM Act funding in the next available round. Several other states have also used their own funding to launch retrofit programs that target low and moderate income residents. At the local level, Boston may want to consider a program Washington, D.C. has launched that provides flood retrofits. They're targeting their resources with a focus on equity. Funds are provided on a reimbursement basis, but the district provides upfront support for residents based on need. The program is funded with a FEMA grant that pays 75% of the cost. Another notable local effort is a New York City pilot project designed to provide affordable flood insurance for low and moderate income residents. Many low-income residents are priced out of flood insurance. For renters in basement locations, insurance is not even available. Standard flood insurance focuses on property damage. It does not address immediate cash needs, such as finding alternative housing and transportation, or replacing food, medicine, and clothing. Parametric insurance, a relatively recently developed product, provides a cash payment within days of a triggering event. It's a lower-cost solution that could address immediate needs. In Puerto Rico, for example, cash payments of up to $10,000, depending on hurricane wind intensity, are made within 72 hours of the storm event. Holders of policies have unrestricted use of the funds to address their priority needs. And then, next slide. And finally, we need to continue improving our development regulations. The state just released the latest 5-year climate and hazard mitigation plan. It includes a recommendation to develop a stretch flood building code that municipalities could adopt. This will be an opportunity for Boston to weigh in on needed changes and to share its experience with setting higher standards. Strengthened development regulations are needed to reduce flooding and flood damage. Flood damage to heating, cooling, and electric systems is expensive and increases the likelihood of displacement from homes and apartments. The claims data reveal that 83% of claims in Boston had depths of 6 inches or less. The state building code should require elevation to at least that height for all new and replacement utilities, both inside and outside of FEMA flood zones. We'd also like to see the state move forward with long-delayed updates to the wetland stormwater regulations that would take into account increasing rainfall rates and the lifespan of projects. At the local level, regulations that limit impervious surfaces and manage stormwater at the site level are well-known strategies that reduce stormwater flooding. The Conservation Commission will have an additional opportunity to address stormwater flooding as we develop maps and regulations for the inland flood resilience zone, which will address areas outside current FEMA flood zones at the risk of future flooding. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hurst. Ms. Norton, you have the floor.
Sure. My name is Emily Norton. I am the Executive Director of the Charles River Watershed Association. And to make sure I don't forget, I strongly encourage you all to see the Inundation District, which is the new movie by David Abel. It was just screened last night by the Boston Globe. It's about the seaport. And I don't want to give anything away, but it's going to get a lot more water. So, but he does a great job. Really appreciate the chair and the counselors giving us this opportunity. So just first, quick background. Charles River Watershed Association was founded in 1965 by a group of residents who did not accept the conventional wisdom at the time that the Charles could not be cleaned up. And why a watershed group would be so important to Boston. The many, if not all of the things you need to do to clean up the river further are also things that help prevent against flooding. It's all about how you manage water. The Charles River watershed is 35 cities and towns. The river starts in Hopkinton and winds its way north. And water does not respect municipal boundaries. So decisions made upstream in the Charles River watershed affect the health and safety of people in Boston. We have something called the Charles River Climate Compact that Boston is a part of, where we work with our cities and towns to address flooding and flood storage. And so we're really excited about that and the work that is going forward on that. I won't get into that further, but know that things are happening to keep you all safe, and that your staff are a big part of that. So let's see, I'm going to skip that part. All right, so I wanted to touch on a few things, and I've had the chance to, or our staff have had the chance to speak with you on some of these already, but never want to give up an opportunity to talk about it more. I'll start out by saying that you all are very fortunate in the mayor that you have, who really gets this. John Sullivan, who you're going to be hearing from, and I know that you know, is a great resource for you all. Kate England was an amazing hire. So you've got a lot of things going for you, but you have a lot of challenges as well. So I want to just talk about a few of them. CSOs, combined sewer overflows. There's still raw sewage going into the Charles River, and stormwater is a big part of that. Even this last Head of the Charles weekend before last, day 2, Sunday, was a red flag event. So people were rowing in water that was not safe to be rowing in, and one of the boats did overturn. We can do better. The Clean Water Act of 1972 promised fishable, swimmable rivers by 1983. Not there yet. The Clean Charles Initiative of 1995 promised a swimmable Charles by 2005. We're not there yet. So the people of this area, including Boston, have been promised a clean, swimmable Charles River for a long time, and decisions made by Boston strongly affect the health of the river. In terms of what you all could be doing, as you probably know, the MWRA has not met its obligation under the Boston Harbor lawsuit to reduce the frequency and volume of CSOs. So that's something we're in frequent conversation with them about, along with DEP and EPA. But it would be incredibly helpful for our advocacy if the Boston City Council were to demonstrate support for CSO elimination by a certain timeline. In addition, the city can take its own actions to reduce CSOs. You might be aware that Philadelphia mandated 10 years ago that the city there had to provide green stormwater infrastructure throughout their CSO drainage area in order to reduce discharges. So would love to work with you on that. As you know, swimming in the Charles is not allowed, but just imagine if we really were serious about addressing this, if your residents of any income level, when it gets, our hotter summers, could swim in the river. That is a goal that we should never give up on, and we should be committing ourselves to achieving. Stormwater pollution. In terms of where that pollution comes from, according to our data, about 50% is stormwater runoff entering the river upstream of Boston, and 50% comes from Boston, Cambridge, and Brookline. So there are definitely things you can blame upstream communities for some, but there are steps that you all can be taking. Stormwater pollution is the biggest challenge facing the Charles River. You probably know this. Anytime it rains or the snow melts, whatever hits that paved surface goes straight into the storm drain, straight into the river, untreated. And Boston is under a legal obligation under the Clean Water Act to reduce certain pollutants, including nutrient pollution, by 62%. And I'm sure John Sullivan will talk about that. But I would encourage the city to look at what Watertown is doing, where they are requiring that new projects store stormwater up to a 100-year storm, which is more than Boston is currently doing. And lastly, I do want to offer a shout out to Boston Water and Sewer for implementing a stormwater fee starting next year. That is critical so that stormwater investments are not competing with other investments in the general fund. And then I do want to give you, I think I've spoken about this with some of you, but for those who aren't aware, the EPA is going to be issuing a new permit program next year releasing it anyway for comment. That's very, very important for Boston. CRWA worked with CLF to petition EPA to do this, but what it's going to do is require private property owners with an acre or more of impervious cover to get their own stormwater permit. Because when you think about it, why should the ratepayers and taxpayers of Boston pay for large property owners with their own big parking lots to reduce their pollution? That's not really fair. So but you may hear squawking from your larger institutions, so it's really important for you to understand that this really is an equity thing, that folks who are responsible for the most pollution would be required to address it. This permit is going to include the Charles River watershed, Neponset River watershed, and the Mystic. This is the biggest geographic area in the country that this has been done, so it's probably going to get a lot of attention, and we will need support from elected leaders and those who care about a cleaner river and less flooding to support it. Age-old topic, Widette Circle. So we've been advocating around this issue. I think I was I know it was pre-COVID, so it was 2019, speaking at a hearing, and then Councillor Michelle Wu was a real leader on this. But we continue, well, Widette Circle, one of the lowest lying areas of Boston, floods already. I know that there's interest in turning it, there's been interest in turning it into a stadium, into an Amazon warehouse, into where we should be storing trains. It used to be open water. If we maintain it as a developed site, we think that is, I should have brought a slide for this, but at least I have copies of this. So what our data shows is that if we do either all or part of that area of the city as a wetland. I know that sounds out there, but it really shouldn't in terms of the amount of water that we're facing. You can be protecting this wider area of neighborhoods from stormwater flooding, and it will help it's very complementary to the Fort Point Channel project that John Sullivan, I'm sure, will be talking about, but he's been in the news about. So anyway, that would be very bold for Boston to do that, but we think you should be doing it. I'm almost done. Alston, there's a lot going on in Alston. Please know that we have been on the ground with your residents, helping them understand some of the risks that they currently face, much less risks that they will face depending on how Harvard redevelops a lot of land. I attended a meeting last week about the new Beacon Yards project that'll be created by the straightening of the pike, and I was disappointed that one of the slides shown said that this area is not vulnerable to flooding because the new Charles River Dam near the Zakim Bridge controls the height of the Charles River. That is simply not accurate, that is a low-risk area for flooding, and I did communicate that with the folks organizing it, and I was happy to see that the slides that were sent out afterwards had more language about the risk of flooding. It's very vulnerable to flooding, and if folks don't understand that, then they're not going to support you all making the investments or making the decisions that you need to make. So I wanted to share that. And then lastly, the I-90 project, you've also heard us on this. I have some comment letters that we have been sending. We hired a company named Geosyntec to look at the 3 models for the I-90 project. What they found was the at-grade model, as currently conceived, had the most risk of flooding, the most stormwater pollution, and the least amount of park space. We've been advocating looking at reducing the number of lanes, and I've been called crazy for saying that. I don't think it's crazy. You could look at those zipper lanes or whatever they're called, where it's, on rush hour this way, you've got more lanes. Something to be creative so that you're not creating more of a flood risk for your residents. That is what we believe that project does. And then lastly, this is truly lastly, we're working on a couple restoration projects in Boston, the Muddy River and Canterbury Brook, that are related to stormwater and capturing stormwater, green stormwater infrastructure. They'll be complicated, but with support from you all and from your residents, I'm confident that we can make those areas much more restored. The Muddy River is the single most polluted part of the Charles that we test. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Norton. Mr. Simonelli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor. Good morning. My name is Christian Simonelli. I'm the Executive Director of the Groundwater Trust. Our organization, the Trust, was established by this council in 1986 to monitor groundwater levels in Boston's filled land neighborhoods, where thousands of buildings are supported on wood piles. Many of the buildings will last indefinitely if the wood piles remain submerged in groundwater. However, if the groundwater levels drop, the piles can begin to decay, eventually leading to expensive foundation repairs not covered by home insurance. Today, we monitor those groundwater levels using our 800-plus groundwater observation well network. Maintaining groundwater levels is a partnership. That partnership includes city and state agencies which have committed through the City-State Groundwater Working Group to maintain and repair underground infrastructure, sewers, tunnels, drains, manholes, etc., in our areas of interest. Replenishing groundwater levels is also a partnership. What we get for rainfall or snow melt is ultimately maintaining and replenishing the groundwater table. The Boston Water and Sewer Commission has required thousands of their customers to install groundwater recharge systems to clean the water for pollution prevention and to comply with the Groundwater Conservation Overlay District Article 32 zoning that was established in 2006. While we have seen a positive impact to area groundwater levels where these systems are installed, it is simply limited by the fact that we need more of them to have a greater sustainable influence. As many of you have mentioned, this summer was an eye-opener, particularly the month of July, where parts of the city received just over 10 inches of rainfall. While we had just over 11 inches of rainfall in July of 2020-21, the impact of what fell this past July was more intense. As an example, in the span of 8 days, the city received just over 6 inches of rainfall. One day, just over 1 inch of rainfall fell in the span of an hour. Another day, 3/4 of an inch fell in a half hour. And another day, just over an inch and a half fell in less than a half hour. Frequent, more intense events like this are now the new normal and not the outlier. Also, we read 73 observation wells the day after that deluge. 28 of those observation wells were the highest they had ever been. All those wells have over 20 years worth of data. So the water's just getting higher and higher. I was delighted when Mayor Wu announced a new policy for stormwater mitigation using green infrastructure last October and selected Kate England to lead it. There was no one more qualified or enthusiastic about green infrastructure. Finally, we had a policy in place with a qualified administrator to oversee it. While we work with Kate and her team on green infrastructure in the public way, we cannot forget about the private property owners. I received a few inquiries during the summer deluge from property owners concerned about flooding and what they could do to help mitigate the impact on their property. In addition, property owners who had already installed groundwater recharge systems but needed support with maintenance. How do we clean these things? How do we maintain them? Were the questions. While we did our best to steer those who reached out to us in the right direction, there should be a resource to educate and advise homeowners on what they can do. Our organization is willing to assist in any way that we can. I look forward to working with this council and all representatives here today on moving this discussion forward in an efficient, productive manner that ultimately bears fruit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simonelli, and thank you all for your presentations and for all of your hard work on this issue. It has been my pleasure as the chair of this committee to hold 2 hearings around stormwater infrastructure, and so I just want to reaffirm that the Boston City Council and this committee is incredibly committed to ensuring that we're moving the work that you are doing forward. I'm going to turn the floor over for questions to our 2 sponsors, and I'm going to start with Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, we've got a problem. In terms of just the low-hanging fruit, and I think raising community awareness, residents' awareness is a huge part of it. I think we'll hear more in the next panel about that as well. But in terms of the low-hanging fruit and the things that we can take action on sort of quickly, what do you think will be our go-to list of let's raise the alarm, and what's the go-to list of things that we could tackle really quickly that we could move forward?
I guess I'd suggest that one is the idea of a simple brochure and materials made available in city departments. I think that there's a need for a pretty basic outreach campaign showing people and alerting them that the flooding can happen anywhere and their basement risks.
And then in terms of the legislative action at the state level, are we working with the state to try and lift this bar on sharing information about flood risk, etc.? Where are we at with that?
So at the state level, I think the most promising and what MAPC is looking at is the legislation that would require revealing flood history. The making claims data available is a federal issue with the Federal Privacy Act. So I think we would look for that to be taken up when the Congress again takes up the National Flood Insurance Program. That tends to be something that Congress has a hard time completing, so I don't have a lot of hope on that side of things.
And then the issue of just basic basement seepage and high groundwater levels, and in terms of zoning, are other municipalities working on looking at when they're doing permitting for below grade units, etc. Are there any sort of standards being implemented?
The challenge with that is that it's governed by the state building code, and municipalities aren't allowed to supersede the code or to deviate from the code. And so, which is why I mentioned that the state is going to be looking at creating a stretch code, much like the stretch environmental code, that I would hope would address some of those issues. So I think that's the most promising approach that I'm aware of, and I think that's why I also think about it as a comment, like that's not going to happen overnight, but education could happen pretty much overnight.
So that means that we're sort of restricted in how we can modify our zoning. It's really dictated from the state down, and
well, to the extent that the building code, yes, it's zoning and building code restrictions limit local options.
And have you had conversations with the state, like to think about, this, you said this, the flood stretch, the stretch code. Where are we at with that conversation?
I think it's just in the beginning stages, although there is another project. So that recommendation just came out in the state hazard mitigation plan within the last month. So I would hope in the next year or two that moves forward. There's another project that is going to wrap up at the end of this year that the state has also forwarded, which is actually to put together information on local regulatory and zoning things municipalities can do that won't conflict with the building code. So that should be out by the end of the year, and that may provide some good options for the city.
So you passed your local wetlands ordinance, I want to say 4 years ago, and it still hasn't been implemented. That's something that seems like a, low-hanging fruit. It is my understanding that cities and towns can restrict development in areas that are identified as flood zones, and there's different rules if you are building near those, like no basements or whatever they are. I'm not an expert at that. But as MAPC, as the folks described so eloquently, a lot of our cities and towns are in flood zone, or the areas are in flood zones. They just haven't been recognized because we're all relying on FEMA flood maps, which are decades out of date and not getting updated. So perhaps the city would, it sounds like that happened in other states, and that was the first I'd heard of it, but if the city has the authority to identify its true flood risk areas and then apply existing building limitations. It's not new, the idea of how do we deal with floodable areas. We've been doing that. All of our cities and towns have been doing that. The problem is the areas are not accurate anymore. Yeah. So apply existing, this is what we do in a flood area. Well, apply those, and it's going to be challenging because it's going to be telling people they can't do things with their property that they've been able to do. I mean, I love these ideas about making it really explicit which properties are actually flood risks, but if that's your property, it's not going to be worth as much money. Yeah. So this is going to be a really complicated thing, but this is what we do. Lead disclosure, other things, we force disclosure. We, of course, should be doing this. Not just Boston, all of our cities and towns. So it would be amazing if Boston were to lead on this, because obviously Boston is a leader and it helps other cities and towns do that, but that absolutely, those are some, I'm not saying easy, but those would be some initial things. As I mentioned, looking at the CSO catchment areas and prioritizing green stormwater infrastructure in those areas. And then, this is really more of a water quality, but there's going to be flood mitigation benefits to that. And so doing that analysis. So those are some, initial things. And absolutely educating, because people, when they're told there's something that they can't do that they used to be able to do, they don't like it. So but if it's been explained that this is keeping us all safer, then that's better. No one brought up trees, but the work that you're doing in that is also really important. I know from the work that I've been doing in Newton, when you tell someone that they can't cut down a tree, or that it's going to be more expensive to cut down a tree on their private property, doesn't always go well. But that is also a big part of this. Trees cool the air, clean the air, hold stormwater, sequester carbon. So it's really a part of doing, protecting the trees on your own property, expanding the trees on your own property in areas where that's appropriate, is also a big part of adjusting stormwater.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just their comments. I think when we first were promoting the Groundwater Conservation Overlay District, we went out to the neighborhoods and we said, this is coming, this is what you need to do. And you can let people know that there's a bunch of different ways to mitigate this. You don't have to do one thing. You just said, we're going to put in a dry well. You can put in porous pavers. You can make it look nice. You can plant trees. You can do it a bunch of different ways. So there's a lot of different ways to mitigate this. And if somebody is doing a gut rehab, for example, and they're going to have to comply with the Groundwater Conservation Overlay District anyways, they can also put in porous pavers. You're already in there doing the work. Do it once. Go in there and do it once. But you definitely need to get the word out to people. Like I said, I received a few inquiries of people that are willing to do stuff, but they just need a resource and somebody to tell them, okay, this is the direction I should go. And we worked with water and sewer, so I sort of steered people towards water and sewer to that, and water and sewer came out and looked at the property and said, you could do this, you could do that, but there needs to be more of, I think, a dedicated resource. I mean, water and sewer does great work, but they have, like a lot of other city departments, a lot on their plate.
I think one thing that might be useful for folks, for ordinary householders, is just the notion of a show and tell, sort of some demonstration projects. Like I know we had flooding in our basement over many years, and we put in a rain garden, and we take all the water from the yard and from the roof and put it in the yard, and we haven't had rainwater. It doesn't go into the storm drains; it goes into the yard. And we sort of invite people over to look at it. I don't know how many people had also took our ideas and did it, but I think just in terms of just practical applications and sharing, empowering people to take some ownership of the issue themselves, and some good like demonstration projects that we could show to folks that what's possible and what sort of cost it would be attached to it, and then convince them that it's the right thing to do. As well. But, thank you. There's lots of good ideas here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Braden, Councillor Durkin, you have the floor for questions.
Thank you so much, and I'm really honored to be speaking about this issue because I think it's so important to our city's climate resilience and whether people are going to be able to live here in the future. So wanted to ask just a quick question. If you had to pick one legislative, I know you guys are approaching this issue with a lot of nuance, but if you had to pick one legislative priority that in your respective, legislative recommendation around stormwater in the city of Boston, it could be not just an ordinance, but something that is a regulation. What would you say is the top priority for your individual and respective priorities?
I defer to the state. I already have the G code, just to be fair.
Yeah.
So my area is covered. But no, I mean, I think, potentially something along those lines, some language, some, I don't want to call it maybe new zoning, but something to help promote. And like you said, we're protecting, ultimately, we are protecting people's property. People are protecting their property from this stuff. I mean, simply put, a home is not going to be as valuable if the basement floods 4 feet. You're going to devalue the property. When we establish the Groundwater Conservation Overlay District, not only do you put water in the ground, but there also needs to be a certification that the work that's being accomplished at that particular property is not going to have a negative impact on the groundwater table. So, for example, for a new building that is going to be designed with 3 levels of underground parking, that needs to be designed to be waterproofed, not to have a negative impact on the groundwater levels. So perhaps something along those lines where any modification, any new construction, you're going to be required to put in some type of porous material, some type of recharge structure. Is sort of how I would look. I mean, if you take a typical block and you apply 40 to 45 inches of rainfall over a typical block in the cities, let's say Back Bay, for example, we did a calculation. It was about 3.3 million gallons of water a year that just fell in that one block. A lot of that right now is just going right into the street and just being carried off into the system. The majority of that could be put back into the ground. So it just gives you an idea of the amount in just that one block. Just to give you, again, an idea on the number.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, look at Boston Water, listen to John Sullivan, look at the inundation maps, the updated flood risk maps and change the rules around them. Areas that are actually vulnerable need to be treated differently, and that's unfortunately going to be a lot of Boston. Don't keep, there's Boston, to its credit, has done a lot of plans and a lot of reports, and now's the time for action.
I think also looking at where stormwater, the stormwater requirements can be expanded both through the Conservation Commission, and looking at applying the stormwater requirements to smaller parcels would be things I would think about.
I think for me, coming from the perspective of a renter and through an environmental justice lens, providing support for low-income residents who experience damage, that was really important to me.
Thank you. And just to add to that, what incentives should, there's two lenses when we talk about homeowners. I feel like there's the after the fact, when something has already happened. How do we make sure, and that was a great presentation, how do we make sure after the fact that people have the resources they need to make to get the work done that they need to get done after stormwater. But I want to shift a little bit to the idea of how do we create incentives for private homeowners to do the work prior to something happening. Do you guys have any recommendations on the things that have been done in other places, or ways that we as a city could provide incentives for homeowners to get done what they need to get done so that their homes are protected?
I think one way that will come up, I think we'll probably hear from John Sullivan in terms of the stormwater fee. And I anticipate that what I will hear is that Boston is moving towards adopting one of MAP's recommendation we've made to across our region, which is to have a stormwater fee, and through that fee to incentivize infiltration green infrastructure on the property.
It's a little challenging because sometimes it can be challenging because often the water is coming from elsewhere, so you really need to have a watershed approach, a sub-watershed and a watershed approach. But when there are things that can be done on one's own property, such as the permeable pavers, the rain gardens, etc., one could imagine setting up a fund that could be tapped, and you could prioritize landlords, you could prioritize low-income areas, you could have it time limited. The early days of electric vehicle promotion, the federal government offered more generous rebates for those who bought an EV early, and that got people, so one could imagine, if you apply in the first 6 months, you get more funding, just as a way to kind of get that going, and then share the news about it so that people would get excited. So just think about sort of those behavior change theories on how you get people to take action.
This is perhaps not specifically an incentive, but I do want to highlight one of our recommendations was looking at Washington, D.C., applying for FEMA grants that provided retrofit support to low and moderate income residents. I think that's really an important strategy, and I think it's realistic that there's funding out there to do that.
So in terms of, I wanted to specifically this for Emily, is there any legislative recommendations you have for the elimination of CSOs and reducing discharges in the Charles River watershed?
Yeah, so definitely having the City Council show support for it. I think our biggest challenge, if you sort of read the history of the Boston Harbor cleanup, it was really when the public it demonstrated their outrage because the river had been disgusting for decades, and it was just sort of accepted. It's really interesting to think about that. It was really because people rose up and were like, no, that's not acceptable. And George H.W. Bush came here and embarrassed Dukakis with dirtiest harbor in America. I'm not saying that's why he lost, but I'm sure it couldn't have helped. So having people be aware is really important. The analysis of, so we had some Northeastern students that we worked with who looked at 5 specific outfalls. You can literally trace which toilets lead to sewage releases during big storms, and they looked at some solutions, so green roofs, blue roofs in those areas. So green roof has the greenery, blue holds in the water. Doing rain gardens along the Commonwealth Avenue Mall, and it was very looking at porous alleys. So they had a lot of sort of creative ideas that have not been analyzed by the MWRA that I'm aware of to date, and showing support for that, requiring some sort of analysis of that. You have a great, I mean, Kate England is a superstar nationally, but focusing GSI installations in those CSO catchment areas, or at least the analysis, and then what would make sense. That would be amazing.
And then for Christian Simonelli, obviously I'm honored to be a new trustee of the Boston Groundwater Trust. Wanted to talk a little bit more. Obviously, your organization provides a lot of resources to homeowners and renters about what's happening in their area, in regards to the levels of water. Mm-hmm. But what more could the city be doing to partner with you and provide resources so that we, so that residents are aware of these issues?
I really think, and I've learned actually a lot of, I think a huge benefit of working with Kate is Kate is sort of charged with bringing all city departments together, and for lack of a better term, pulling people out of their silos to come together and talk about this stuff and implement it. So I think that perhaps more dialogue, whether it be with Public Works, Transportation, and us sort of partnering and going out, and where, for example, where Public Works is doing a project, say along Tremont Street, for example, they just did a whole, Tremont Street redo. But unfortunately, that was at a point where it was too far along in the design to implement any green infrastructure in the public way. So there's a missed opportunity. Let's not have any more of those. Let's move forward when we know we're going to redesign a street, and we know we're going to, do a huge area like a parking lot, or we're going to do, sidewalks over, to have a dialogue about that. We have wells that are in those ways. That was really the only way that we were alerted about it, because some of our wells were going to be impacted. So I think more of that is really what we would love to see, and more, again, of a proactive approach. And again, that allows the opportunity where the public comes, they comment, residents come out, and then you could say at that point, oh, by the way, you could be doing this on your property, and it benefits you because, and then you go through all the reasons. So I think that's something that could, potentially could be done.
Thank you. And I agree that that synergy and connection, I experienced that the first time I met with Kate England as a city councilor, just connecting the dots of where, how to interact with the agencies, obviously, and externally and internally within the city, to make sure that we come to a better result in terms of green infrastructure. So I'm excited to work with her and to work with all of you, because I think it really takes advocates advocating for what is important in this regard, for us to come to the best solution. So wanted to go a little bit, my last question is in regards to equity and stormwater resilience. And so wanted to talk a little more about that, if you had thoughts around what the city could be doing. And I know we are doing a lot, and I know we are beginning the process of doing a lot, but just where the city could be doing more, given that when I look at this flood map, it's really important that we prioritize environmental justice communities.
So I think a couple things. One is the idea of retrofit support, and the other is the idea of looking at this parametric insurance pilot study. I think New York is partway through it. I think it's a February to February study, but it is really the case that lower and moderate income folks, and particularly renters and basement renters, are not going to have resources available to them from flooding, and the parametric insurance is a way to address. Flood insurance is really more targeted to a homeowner who needs to rebuild their home, but if you're a renter who's flooded, you may have much more immediate needs that you can't meet in terms of medications, where are you going to stay tonight, how are you going to get to work if your car's been flooded, those kinds of things. So I think those are, the parametric insurance is it happens, and it's happening in Puerto Rico, and they're exploring it in New York. It's relatively new, but I think it's really promising. And retrofit support programs are happening all over the place. States have done them. In Florida, they did a program where they provided support, again, to low-income folks for hurricane protection. It can be done on the city level. Washington, D.C. showed it can be done with grant support from FEMA. So I think of those as the practical needs. And is there anything you want?
Yeah, I would add when talking about green stormwater infrastructure that if we're placing green stormwater infrastructure anywhere, prioritizing environmental justice neighborhoods and partnering with communities to ensure that those installations are what the community desires. You know, you're bringing above ground amenities, so ensuring that there's community voice in what that looks like, because there's so much value beyond just stormwater management there.
Thank you, and I'll pass this back to the chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here with us today. So there are a couple of things. Now, I want to just, and I've made this point before when we had this hearing, and so I'm gonna take the moment to make the point now, is that our city and our neighborhoods, they have their own natural kind of hydrology, and we've built on top of that. And so I'm saying this because I consider, and at least in our office, how we continue to look at green stormwater infrastructure has been as a resource, not a threat. And I think a lot of the times when we talk about green stormwater infrastructure, it is who's going to be upset by it, what's going to be the cost. It is received, and I think that this is going to be a big part of the education by homeowners, by residents, maybe to developers, as something that maybe begrudgingly they have to do, when in actuality it's a resource to us, so that we can replace the process, the natural process that already happens, that we've stopped with our own development and our own building around it. And I know that Chief Benford is here, and so I'll talk a little, I leave my questions a little bit to how the city uses its own flood zones, not our FEMA flood zones, for like our own emergency management, because I think it's gonna have a big impact. So I'm really interested in the parametric insurance. The reason for that is because we had a massive pipe rupture in my district on Heath Street last year that displaced a half a dozen families, people who were renters. The city had to cover a lot of their hotel rooms for months. They didn't have insurance, it wasn't gonna be covered. And so we got into a really big problem trying to make sure that people had the support for that kind of flooding. And so I really appreciate that, and my office is gonna be looking a little bit at that. The other thing, the requirement to reveal flood history. So our office, I'm also the chair of the housing committee here on the city council, and one of the things that we're working on to finish before this year is over is a renter's bill of rights. And so I wanted to bring up that this idea that it would require landlords to reveal flooding history, I think that it's really ripe to be included in a renter's bill of rights, to be included in the city. And so I wanted to say that there is an opportunity here to codify that immediately. And so I know that there's more work to do on the federal and the state level to make it so that maybe we can reveal that for homeowners, but there's an opportunity here to make it so that people who are renting are required to have flood history. Let me see. So the Renters Bill of Rights, we have had meetings with Charles River, our office, to talk specifically about Wooded Circle and I-90. And this project to reduce the lanes and therefore the flooding. In your earlier comments, you talked a little bit about Alston Brighton and the impacts that we were going to see in Alston Brighton based on how Harvard developed some of their land. Can you talk a little bit about what that might look like? Are there different proposals from Harvard that would impact the flooding?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Councilor Braden can speak to this even more than I can, but the Enterprise Research Campus, for example, and I think that's farther along. My staff, who are all much smarter than I am, are the ones that are more on the ground about that. But the early versions did not have as much in the area of open space and green that we would have recommended. So we very much tried to take the tack of not coming out and telling the neighborhood what we think they should do, but just really sharing, here's what the science says. Because it's hard when it's been decades or centuries a certain way. It's hard to think about, oh, this was open water, this was mudflats, this was tidal, and so we just don't think about it until that big storm comes. So that's the kind of work that we've been trying to do there. And like I said, they're just starting the visioning for the Beacon Yards And like I said, I was disappointed right out of the gate. It was, oh yeah, not a big flood risk. So we've been really just trying to help residents understand that with meetings, webinars, tabling it at community events and so forth, so that they can advocate for what makes sense for them once you have that fully informed understanding.
Thank you. And in terms of support for the I-90 project, we've talked about this, at least with your team. We talked about a possible resolution, letters from the councils in ultimately supporting a shift in the current plan, because the current plan, as my understanding, would increase flooding and so on and so forth. So I don't think you're crazy to suggest that we reduce the lanes there. I've had an in-depth conversation, and I think that that's really the way to go. But whether or not we can get people to listen this far on in the process, I think, is another. I have another question, particularly about, there was a suggestion made around restricting development in flood zones. Is there, or do you see an opportunity here to use a zoning overlay on these flood zones that would restrict development? And how do you imagine development would be restricted in these flood zones if we could use that? We're using overlay districts, at least in my office, to talk about anti-displacement zones. So to look at places in the city where people are at risk for displacement and kind of put an overlay on it in our zoning code. And so I see that there's also a possibility of using a zoning overlay to really identify these flooding areas, not FEMA's flooding, but our actual flooding, and restrict development in those flood zones. How do you imagine, like how would we restrict development? What would be helpful?
So we have seen a couple communities, it's this trickiness with the building code, so you can't conflict with it. You could, however, do an overlay and restrict development altogether, because that doesn't conflict with the building code. Yep. That may or may not be what makes sense in some of these places. Mm-hmm. I think one way that we may be able to get at it is again through the wetlands ordinance, particularly as we're looking at expanded areas in the inland flood zone. So that may be a good option. But one could, and some communities have identified areas where they simply don't allow development.
Yeah, and I think the BPDA, as they're transitioning, there are a lot of changes being made to the zoning code, and I think they want to move away from the overlay district, but I think that this might be, in addition to the wetlands ordinance, if it's taken 4 years to implement it now, we're trying to how do we get something actually done? I think that's my question, right? If you have a policy, if you have an ordinance, if it's not being implemented, the work is not going behind it, then there's typically back-end reasons why it's not moving forward, and so maybe the wetlands ordinance wasn't the best pathway, and maybe an overlay. And so thinking about what the best way to really attack this problem is. I am worried about green, as chair of the Housing and Environment, I'm always worried about green gentrification, which is kind of a conversation that we always have. And so this idea that making flood zones more visible, has a possibility of lowering someone's property value, let's say, then it also has the possibility of raising property values in places that are more upland or inland and that have less risk for flooding, which could cause people to sell their homes, go into different neighborhoods that might be higher ground, and then displace the people there, right, based on what's happening. And so I don't know that there's a solution for that. I think that this is something that I always bring up when we're having these conversations about environmental justice. Given the map, we're seeing where the flooding is happening. It's happening in these environmental justice communities. It's happening in these working class Black and brown communities. And I'm not sure, and maybe you're the experts, maybe you know more than me, but I'm not really sure what we can do about that. Because how do we protect people from being displaced? How do we protect these already vulnerable communities from losing property value? I think the way that I'm seeing it is you target these interventions, and you target these interventions where they are there. But if we're not using an updated map of where the flooding is happening, then we don't really know where to target those interventions. And so it seems like what's coming before the chicken or the egg. So I'm curious what, if any, impact you're anticipating on the housing market, home ownership in these particular areas where there is already flooding, and then in neighborhoods where there isn't as much flooding, where people are, presumably going to want to go as we prepare to take on more water as a city.
I see that as a bigger issue with coastal flooding, where we know it's happening here, it's going to happen here. I actually feel like from our research, the message should be basement flooding can happen virtually anywhere and everywhere. And so it's about supporting people to protect their homes. I mean, if I had a magic wand, I simply wouldn't allow people to build below ground. I think basements flood. And I mean, that raises other issues that we're concerned about in terms of often affordable housing is basement apartments that we can't necessarily afford to lose. So there are some real tensions and challenges there. But although in Boston, the map does show flooding, I'd say more predominantly in Dorchester and Roxbury, I really think the message is its potential is pretty much anywhere. And we need to support folks in how to live differently in their homes.
And we also know that green stormwater infrastructure, in the long run, it does reduce costs, right? And so there is some benefit to it in that sense. But I'm just always curious about what's going to happen, like what happens to people's property values and so on and so forth when we move that way.
Yeah, I would say that it really, whatever the solutions are the same solutions we need to address affordable housing anyway.
Yeah.
You know, obviously the MBTA Communities Act is coming into play now, and I'm also serve as a city councilor in Newton for a couple more months. I'm not running for re-election, and the city will be voting on that as other communities are as well. And the guidance for that law said that a community may restrict development away from flood zones. Not shall, may. That was the guidance. So to me, that's just another example of how our leaders don't get it. So I think that certainly CRWA has done a flood model. It's basically a computer simulation of where flooding is likely to occur. It's much more accurate than FEMA. And there are areas that are more vulnerable than others. And so if I could wave a magic wand, we would be directing development to areas that are not going to flood and restricting it from areas that are going to flood. But that's not what's happening right now. And whose job is that, really? And it's going to be politically contentious, not just in Boston, but all of our communities. When you tell someone, yeah, where your house is, bad idea. I mean, there's areas of Newton that are already running some pumps, and our data is showing like it's going to get a lot wetter. So we're gonna be experiencing a heap of pain. And so better, I mean, it's wonderful that you all are doing this to try to get ahead of it. So, you know, whatever the solutions are for folks who are even more vulnerable, renters, low income, et cetera, it's the same solutions that we need to be applying. There are those who think that more supply is going to bring the cost down. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it is just more increasing our housing vouchers and so forth. But whatever those solutions are, it's not, you know, we already have the problem. This is just another layer on it.
Yeah, and reducing development in one area and increasing it in another is also going to require that we get very comfortable with increasing density, which is one of the ways that you kind of try to mitigate the housing crisis here in the city. And so it's going to have to do a lot with how we build and where we build. I think that you have been very clear with what we need to do as a council to move this work forward. I'm going to do more research on the insurance. I think the city has a very clear entry point to really support families that are not covered by this flood insurance and to do something local. And I think it sounds like there's a proof of concept, and I think my office will follow up more on the I-90. The Wooded Circle, it feels like it's farther behind, but I think the I-90 feels like it's moving much quicker to see what we can do, and I'll work with Councilor Braden, since I believe that's your district as well. The I-90 is there, yeah, and to figure out how we can go there. I do not have any further questions at this moment. I'm going to bring it back to the sponsor.
Just a brief comment on the dam issue. Like, if you're focused on coastal flooding and storm surges, the dam, you know, may be depending on the level of sea level rise, the dam may be able to handle it or may not. It's in the questions out there. So I think your concerns about, you know, the Beacon Yards area and the whole lower basin of the Charles River, either side of the river, Watertown, Cambridge, and the areas of Boston that are on the river are well taken. I think we have to almost look at the worst case scenario and prepare for that, rather than sort of have a Pollyanna approach to thinking, oh well, fingers crossed, we'll be okay. You know, we have to look at what is possible, and then I think there's a lot of sort of tools that we have in terms of just educating, and I think to your point about tenants protections, We saw this somewhere writ large that, you know, below grade apartments, even in a brand new construction building, the flooding was in a new build, the first tenants to ever live in that building. And first big storm, like it wasn't even a big storm, it was 2 inches of rain in 2 hours, 4 feet of water in the basement. It was shocking. And I think, you know, I think we pledge ourselves to just continue to work on this issue and see if we can come up with some workable solutions for our residents and long-term sustainability and to help mitigate the impacts of what's coming, and what's here. It's already here. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Councillor Durkin, do you have any more questions?
Oh, no, I just want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you all so much. We are now going to be moving on to the administration panel. And joining us today from the administration, we have Allison Brezius, Chief Whitehammond from the Environment, Energy, and Open Space Cabinet. We have Kate England, the Director of Green Infrastructure for the City of Boston. Chief Benford, also here from the Emergency Management Department for the City of Boston, and John Sullivan, who is the Chief Engineer for the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. John, it's good to see you again. Okay, is Allison here? Okay. Thank you so much. I've just been informed that Chief Whitehammond is not joining us, but we do have Allison, Commissioner Brezius, that will be with us shortly. Just wait for everybody to get settled in. Would you like me to present anything specifically? Would you like me to present anything specifically? Perfect. And I think Allison's coming. So, no? Okay, perfect. You are representing, you're holding down the fort today. This public testimony, thank you so much. Great, so it looks like we have all of our panelists. What I am going to request is that you introduce yourself and your title for the record before we get started, and we're going to start with Kate England with presentations once we do introductions.
Good morning and almost good afternoon. My name is John Sullivan. I'm the Chief Engineer of the Boston Water and Sewer Commission and a resident of Dorchester.
Thank you, John.
Good morning, Shemaine Benford, Chief of Emergency Management for the City of Boston, and also a resident of Dorchester.
Hi, everyone. Kate England. I'm the Director of Green Infrastructure for the City of Boston, formerly a resident of Dorchester, now a resident of Hyde Park.
I'm Chris English. I'm the Chief of Staff in the Inspectional Services Department, and I'm also a resident of Dorchester. So.
Unfortunately, you have a lot of the flooding there, so maybe your work is related to your personal experience. Kate England, you have the floor.
Great. Thanks so much. I will try to keep this brief because I know we're running short on time, but really pleased to be here today. My role as the Director of Green Infrastructure for the City of Boston has allowed me to do some really wonderful work in this area of stormwater management and flood reduction, which is something that I think everybody in this room obviously cares quite a bit about. My position was created last year in July. It's an appointed position appointed by Mayor Michelle Wu. And I was tasked with essentially increasing the implementation of green infrastructure across the city, through increasing collaboration and coordination across departments. The work that we have done so far over the last year or so has been a lot of groundwork laying, really kind of to speak to the point about public education that we heard earlier in the hearing. Spent a lot of time really working to get the public and city staff members and others kind of more informed about stormwater, green infrastructure, how the two can work together, and really kind of helping everyone understand the effects of stormwater mismanagement are evident in our everyday lives. And that green infrastructure is a wonderful tool that can be used to help make the city more resilient and also reduce the amount of flooding that we're seeing. There's a lot of really wonderful stuff that my office has been working on. Again, I will not list all of it now, but I'm happy to answer questions from the group. Now that we've entered into this period of time where the city kind of historically had focused very heavily on coastal resilience, when thinking about climate change. We are now shifting our focus to kind of localized stormwater flooding that affects our inland neighborhoods. And so we've got some great work going on in those areas as well. And we have a strong focus on environmental justice communities, realizing or recognizing that areas that have more pavement and more buildings, which tends to be the case in our environmental justice neighborhoods, are generating more stormwater and are more vulnerable to stormwater flooding, meaning that flooding is happening more often, but the neighborhoods are often less well equipped to respond to a major flood event. So a lot of the stuff that we are working on in my office is also focused on helping our communities most in need and taking advantage of the folks who live in that community to do a lot of this work with us. And so I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. I cannot remember who was our second. John, were you second?
Mr. Sullivan, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I'm up next. I have a little bit longer, and the previous panel was giving me up every 5 minutes for if there's any issues. So I don't plan on covering them all, except if you have questions, and I can cover any of the things. I have been employed by the city for 51 years. First, I was part of the Public Works Department in the Water Division. And then in 1977, the city spun off the water, sewer, and drain systems into a private political subdivision. So we're in the city, we run in the city, we collaborate with the city, but we're totally independent, budget-wise and administration-wise. And that's, I'm not sure if it's important to know, but that's what we are. We have 1,000 miles of water main that we operate and 1,500 miles of sewers and drains. The largest sewer we operate is 84 inches, but the largest drainage structure is a 13-foot by 26-foot wide drain structure. So the drainage system is very large. Historically, the city was, in order to build and develop, they would simply take streams which wound their way through its neighborhoods, and we straighten them out, putting them in pipes, generally in the street, but they'd be a direct flow. But the real problem there is that the ground remembers how it used to get to the stream. So if you build your house where the stream used to be, you get visited by rainwater every time it occurs. I just bring that up as the conversation we heard. The other thing we need to deal with other towns. You heard that the watersheds have no political boundaries. Brookline has a great influence on the Muddy River, which we also drive into. Milton drains into the city of Boston. Dedham, we actually transform water into Dedham. So we need to be looking not just in our political, but a little bit outside. Another thing you got to remember, we own pipes in the street. We own over 30,000 catch basins, but we do not own nor control the brooks that run through the city. We have, for instance, the Ann Arboretum, the Bussey Brook system, the Goldsmith Brook system. Those aren't under our jurisdiction, although we use them, we dump into them. So that's an important thing to remember. We don't own any land in the city. We operate under city streets or through backyards and easements, but we have no land to build structures, etc. So anything we propose in the future has to be done on someone else's property. Collectively, our property, if we want to keep the city going. So over the past 20 years, we created in 1977, the first thing we did was pollution issues. We were dumping 14 million gallons a day of raw sewage underneath the aquarium in 1977. So the first thing we did was build new interceptors, and we just went after the major problems. Since that time, over the last 20 years, we've improved sewer and drains in Dorchester, Neponset, Jamaica Plain, South Boston, Brighton, East Boston, and downtown. And basically what we did, you heard about the combined sewer overflows, we were separating those pipes. Those pipes were originally designed to carry both sewage and rainwater. We separated them so the rainwater can be diverted right into the local waterways, and the sewage would go to the treatment plant. So that's been a major impact on us. So much so that even now we're continuing. East Boston is scheduled over the next 7 years to have the remaining combined sewers removed. That's over 270 acres of land, all brand new infrastructure will be put in there. If you go over South Boston right now along Dorchester Avenue, you see machinery digging holes everywhere, putting in brand new water sewer infrastructure for over 400 acres. Those two projects combined will be about $350 million of work. Paving the way for new development, paving the way for the city to come in with the green infrastructure on their streets with us having the capacity. One of the other big thing that everyone needs to remember is that the city is a designed stormwater system, and it was designed in what we call a 10-year design storm. Now, that doesn't mean much to anybody. It sounds good and it's really quick to say. We hear about the 100-year design storms, the 100-year floods. Those are actually frequencies. What is more pertinent is the design of a 10-year storm, the way the system was originally built, was to take over one day, 24 hours, 4.8 inches of rain. That's what we planned on moving. That's all we needed to move, because everything we did in engineering was looking backwards. What did it do here? We didn't worry about what it might do in the future. We're currently now changing that around, and we're projecting forward into the future. Our design criteria over in East Boston, we will be taking 6.5 inches of rain rather than the 4.8 for the future. But one of the major problems is downtown. We can't fit another pipe in the street. You can't make them bigger. The only place you can put the water now is if you go down deeper, you can either store it or you can build tunnels. And tunnels are mega expensive and mega energy intensive. Because whatever you put down in that hole, you've got to pump it back out. So we're looking at other ways in what we can do. And green infrastructure will help, but that'll only take care of the first inch or inch and a half of water. And what we're looking at is the problem of the inundations. When Climate Ready Boston first started, we followed it very closely because we collaborate with all the groups, the city groups, the state groups, the watersheds. We partner with everyone to find out what's best for all of us. When Climate Ready Boston did it, we looked at the sea level rise and we found out that they weren't worried about rainfall. Now, mostly when you get a good storm surge, you usually have a storm, and with storms a lot of times comes rain. So we opted to jump in by ourselves and take a look at what would happen for our systems. How would we get the water out if there's a super high tide? The city has done its due diligence by keeping the high tide from inundating us, but what do we do with the rainwater? And that resulted in a study we call the Coastal Resilience, and we have a thing called the Resilience Hub. And the Resilience Hub is available on our website, on our main page, or bwscstormviewer.com. And what that does is tells you what will happen. First, we have to build everything. What will happen if nothing happens? So you see all the areas that flood along the coast. Then what will happen if only the city were to build the barriers and we didn't build anything? And then what we would need to do and how we can actually save the city in the year 2070. Now again, we're taking our best guess at what happens in 2070. We're not sure. We take the projection from the climate scientists and we're developing it. But this model will be updated every 10 years. We're collecting data. Every 10 years we'll update it. Since 1996, we have had 10 rain gauges in the city of Boston. Everything we built in this city was built based on a rain gauge sitting out in Logan Airport. It doesn't rain across the city like it rains at Logan Airport. It's just absolutely bizarre. But those are the data that was used by the city to build this system. With the 10 rain gauges, we can see the rainfall events traversing. Now, you heard about the problems in the flooding in Boston in the year 2010 in March. In Dorchester, they got 11.7 inches of rain in 3 days. And the intensity, the peak intensity in 15 minutes was half an inch of rain, which is a lot of rain. And the problem there is it can't get into our system. The catch basins, which are on the street, you see the big square covers, only allow so much water. So if you've got it coming down on you too hard on the impervious surfaces, it has to sit and wait till it gets into the catch basin. That's where the surface flooding would occur. However, in the March storms, we looked and we got 30 complaints from those. That's all we got across the city. And they were complaints of people with sewage backups, where they had devices in their cellars, whether it be a toilet, a washing machine hookup, or a shower. And they are supposed to be protected by devices. If you build something underground, you need a device to keep sewage from backing up into your home. And people put them in, nobody maintains them. And both for everything we do, we design things for maintenance. Every one of these green infrastructure things that we put in the city, we must plan on maintaining them, because if you don't, within 5 to 7 years, you can have a non-functionally, beautiful looking green infrastructure. Maintenance, and it's very, very expensive, but it needs to be done. We have been requiring every home since the early 2000s that anything built in the city of Boston must handle the first inch of rain or inch and a half. And the reason we were pushing it is we have a consent decree with the EPA and CLF to clean up phosphorus going into the Charles River and also to control the bacteria that goes into all our rivers. It was mentioned that stormwater is pretty dirty. It's extremely dirty. It's washing off all the residual that's been on the street. It's washing. We are attempting to capture the first inch of rain, or inch and a half if your building is big enough. And we've built quite a few of these structures. We're looking forward to the RDA that was mentioned, the Residual Designation Authority, where the acre or so properties will be required to also hold their water. Because as they were doing theirs, we may have the opportunity to take some street runoff and get it into the same structure. So something we're looking forward to and planning on. I guess the biggest thing, the question might come up to everybody, what are we going to do about the future? Everybody looks at the FEMA maps, that's all historical. We have already started planning for a map, the city of Boston, showing you what will happen in the future under certain rain events across the city. It'll be a flood inundation for the rest of the city. To get it done, though, it isn't that simple of just simply making a computer model and saying this is where it goes. It's very important we get it right. If we do it wrong, your neighborhood values may plummet because we tell you it's going to flood in the year 2035, 2040. So first thing we're doing is we're redoing our computer models for both sewer and drain systems. We will have those completed in about a year and a half. Right now we're metering all of our sewers. Not all of them, but the majority of them, so that we can calibrate this model to make sure we understand when it rains out, when the input is by all the particular property areas, how it impacts our system. We get that done, we're immediately putting out the second phase of the inundation model. That model will allow the public to take a look and say, if 2030 occurs, based on our current projections, what might happen to my property? Where will it flood? That's just not just to warn them, it's also to help us determine what are we going to do about it to prevent the floods. Can we build big storage tanks underground? We have looked already at 10 locations in the city where we could possibly divert water and hold it for a day or two. We could hold water in the Island Arboretum, not let the Bussy Brook come into the system. What could we prevent from flooding? And all across the city where the tanks might be. If you look at our coastal inundation, you see we propose tanks. We propose putting a storm barrier in the Fort Point Channel, which would save 10% of the city if that were constructed. But they're not cheap. It's $750 million to do it. And the environmental permitting, et cetera. It's very expensive to do. All across the city, though, in Brighton, in the Back Bay, all of those places, we need to find locations that we can collaborate with others to put devices and put them underground. And you also heard about the new stormwater fee, which we plan on going to public hearings in December and implementation around April of next year. At first, it will be not major for homes, et cetera. It'll be under $10 a month. There'll be a reduction in the sewer fee because we don't take the money out of the sewers. But as we go forward, we have to figure out how we can equitably apply that across to all properties. The good news is there's an incentive credit system. If you build a rain garden, and I'm sure the council will be the first one for the credit application for her rain garden, we can get up to a 30% discount on your fees. It'll add more challenges for ourselves because as people put these in, we need to go out and make sure that they're maintaining them. Because again, maintenance of these things is incredibly expensive. Capital is one thing, the maintenance, and you got to keep track of it. The final thing that it makes me nervous is that the storm of March of 2010, most of the problems, we believe, were groundwater problems. The old streams and everything came in through the basements. And there's nothing we can do about that. In fact, we may actually be causing a bigger problem for that because we're making everybody take water and put it back in the ground. So we may be artificially raising the groundwater across the city, and it won't take much for another storm to raise it enough to get into people's homes. And so there's where we need to do an education. You know, you're responsible for your house. If you want to live down cellar, you've got to make sure the water can't come in. And it's not just overland flooding, because we have very few instances that we know of overland flooding that couldn't get over to us that came in through the houses. We think most of it comes in, and that's why you heard the numbers of 6 inches or so. It leaks into the cellar. So that's a problem that we got to look forward and face. We are not responsible for the groundwater, but we work with all the agencies, the groundwater trust, et cetera, for it, but there's nobody watching out in the districts, Brighton, West Roxbury, Hyde Park. No one's looking at what's happening on the groundwater out there. So that's, as we move forward in the next 4 or 5 years, and this isn't like something we're hoping 20 years from now, we will have an inundation model to help predict what will happen in the future under a series of storms, and we will continually update that and provide it for everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sullivan. We are going to move on to Chief Benford, and then we'll go to Chris English for comments.
Sure.
Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greatly appreciate the opportunity, and want to thank the committee, the body, as well as my city colleagues for joining in the discussion this morning, and certainly want to recognize the advocates for the tremendous work that they do in contributing to the conversation, and certainly last but not least, the mayor, who has given us a general charge across city departments to be more deliberate in working across departments to try and solve some of these systemic issues, and certainly some that are emerging as we move forward. From an emergency management standpoint, I just want to recognize some staff that is here with me that really does a lot of the work in this space. Our unit supervisor, Michaela Krieger, who works in our planning unit, our director of the EOC and operations, Matt Carney, as well as Brooke Amendola, our director of planning and preparedness. From an OEM perspective, a large portion of the work that we do falls in a couple of really key buckets. One is around coordination, particularly during an emergency, and our convening ability to work with city departments, particularly in response to emergency and/or crisis, whether that be planned or unplanned. But there are a couple of things that are worthy of noting in that space is we endeavor, and again, I think this is emblematic of the testimony here today and the tremendous commitment of work being done by all of us that work in this space, is around how do we prevent this from becoming an emergency, right? Is how do we become more deliberate? How do we become more collaborative and more proactive in our response? And from an emergency management perspective, we attempt to create situational awareness and a common sight picture across departments with all of our different stakeholders. Ultimately, this is all in service to the residents, right? So it's how do we take that data, how do we take that information, and how do we take these relationships and make it of utility at the operational level for our departments that serve as our lead departments, as well as our residents. There's been some common themes here this morning, particularly around education. I am a big proponent as we talk about education, and how do we do a better job at that? And when we think about education, I have often coined it as if we can engage in a proactive conversation, if we can engage in education, we have persons, we have communities, we have individuals that don't become liabilities, but actually become partners in how we respond, and it lessens the impact on resources. I want to underscore when we talk about partnerships, and want to be respectful of time, but when we talk about partnerships, it's not just with our city departments, it's also with our private sector partners, and how we better understand this and use that information to inform how we plan both proactively as well as real time as it relates to the different threats that are becoming more and more frequent. I also want to mention as it relates to the process that we use for planning for events for planning two major weather events. I think we have an effective process, but we too come to the table humble and pragmatic, and knowing that there are always different opportunities and ways in which we can inform and improve upon that process. And we hope that as we engage these different conversations and hear across the table from a number of different entities that provide advice, counsel, and work in this space, that we can take that information and build more robust, more equitable, and more informed plans. As a black male, I can tell you that growing up, we didn't talk about things like this. And respectfully, thinking about my own family, my own network, these are still not the types of conversations that we have. So I do appreciate that the work that the administration, the city, the council, and our advocates are doing to ensure that those that are most deserving, or more importantly, those that will be most impacted, will benefit from the work that we're doing in the future. Lastly, I just want to close by mentioning, as we think about our emergency response plans and our proactive plans, they are informed by working with our advocates and working with our city partners. That is really how we develop the meat of our plan. So again, we look forward to continuing that conversation, more importantly, building on that platform of working across departments with the work that all of my colleagues are doing around how can we take this data, take this new information, look at the FEMA flood maps that I think everyone has talked about here, but how do we build upon it? How do we make it more effective so that we understand the individual nuances of our neighborhoods, the street that doesn't show that it's going to flood, but everyone in that community knows that that street floods, right? How do we do a better job with having that type of conversation? And when we're talking about equity, hearing from our communities, we do have a robust process that does engage community conversations when we're talking about updating our hazard mitigation plans that help feed into how we update other plans. We're looking to double down on that to ensure that we are having those conversations with the right neighborhoods, most importantly with all neighborhoods, so that we can ensure our plans are equitable and more responsive to all of our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chief. Mr. English, you have the floor.
Thank you. I will be very brief. ISD is the primary regulatory agency for buildings and structures on private property in the city of Boston. We review permit applications, conduct inspections to ensure compliance with the Boston zoning code, the state building, fire, accessibility, sanitary code, among others. We do inspections in the field. We respond to complaints. We respond to emergencies. It is a broad amount of work, but I'm sure you have questions about it, so I'm happy to take those. That's all.
Thank you so much, Mr. English, for all of your work with ISD. We're going to move on to questions from the councilors, and we're going to start from the sponsors of this hearing order. Councilor Brady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your presentation. We could talk about this for a long time. This is a question for, I think I'm going to go straight to you, Chris, about just ISD. And I know when we have smaller projects that are reviewed and approved by the Zoning Board of Appeal, that very often we ask that they do put in permeable hardscape, that their parking lot is permeable. I think it might be a little bit of a wish and a promise sort of thing, like fingers crossed they might do it, but do we have any enforcement powers to ensure that they do that, and is it something that we should be requiring across the board?
If that's done as part of a proviso for BPDA design review, for example, the BPDA urban designers will review that application and can make recommendations on permeable surfaces. They need a stamp from the BPDA in order to get a building permit from us. So those kind of designs need to be reviewed if it's a proviso on their approval at the Board of Appeal.
I think one of the challenges we have is that we're building more density on smaller lots and more residential neighbourhoods, and we're losing a lot of that. It used to be a requirement that you had to have a certain percentage of your yard was green space that would actually absorb water. So we're sort of losing a little ground on that, but we need to make sure that we're making some accommodations to try and not throw it all out. And so then the other issue is just really with the below grade. John mentioned that a lot of the problems are like seepage and like a high level of groundwater saturation that are inevitably our basement level units are going to get very damp. And I know my colleague, Councillor Lara, has already had a hearing on mould and living conditions in apartments. So, the high humidity levels, do we have regulatory tools to ensure that, the sort of humidity and ground level, below grade level apartments is reasonable, and it's not, because we've had calls this summer about like mould literally growing on people's footwear in their below grade apartment because it's so damp, and it's not conducive to good healthy living. So and then also in terms of that, like in terms of ventilation requirements,
I believe that would both fall under the state sanitary code's minimum standards for human habitation. So as a local board of health, which ISD is, we enforce the state sanitary code. So upon inspection, we can respond to that and issue violations in order to remediate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then, John, you mentioned that there's a lot of focus on the downtown area, and there's a lot of focus on the harbour and along the ocean, and I think I just looked at this map, and I think for those who this map really illustrates that Dorchester and Mattapan are two of the neighbourhoods that are most profoundly affected by flooding. It's like getting some good data on what's happening. You say you're putting in monitors below street monitors in the sewers and the water, in the storm drains to measure what exactly is happening. What sort of insights are you getting from those monitoring devices?
So right now we have 50 or 62 devices in under a pilot project. Once the pilot project is completed in about a year and a half, we will be inundating all the sewers. So we are finding that they're operating pretty well. And during these intense storms, it's because the water hasn't been able to get into them. That the limitation is the number of catch basins and our ability to get the water from the street during an intense storm. We're hopefully going to combine that with our rainfall data using artificial intelligence. And as a storm comes through in real time, we can predict where people may flood. And we can then notify the different city agencies. And when I say notify the agencies, we predict that some streets will be shut down because they'll be flooded. And then you need to notify the fire, police, because you can't get down them, impassable, ambulances. So it's a project we just started for the real time, and we're getting data on how it's raining. The rains are very strange as they come down across the city. Alston Brighton gets hit first, then the storms seem to run down the Mass Turnpike, which it would because that's a natural contour. That's where they build the roadways. And then it hits the south end. We can watch what's happening in Blue Hills, and we can know that Hyde Park's going to get hit, and then Dorchester's going to get hit. So it's a matter of learning, but we're collecting volumes of data, and then we're putting it together in computer models, but we're verifying how accurate these computer models are, and that's what these pilot projects are.
I'm glad to hear that we're not relying on just data from the airport. Like it's always interesting to see weather reports about what's happening in the airport, and you look out, well, it's not anything like what's happening out here. So having a more comprehensive coverage and getting good data from across the city sort of seems like an important piece.
Right, and we collect, and unlike anyone we know, we collect data in 5-minute increments, and everyone else collects it in 15. And why that's important, if we have an inch of rain in 5 minutes, we'll know it's an inch of rain in 5 minutes. Everyone else will think they got an inch of rain in 15 minutes because they only picked up the 2 data points. So that's extremely important, and we got to build this base of data so we can make the projections in the year 2050, what's going to happen.
So in terms of real-time response, are you talking to our friend Chief Benford here and saying, "Hey, this is"? Do you have a real-time monitoring system where you alert other emergency services that this is? Everybody sort of know about it sort of after it's happened, but can you anticipate, like there's a delay, like a flash flood?
Right.
You see the rain, and then 20 minutes later you've got a big problem because all the water comes downhill and into the basins. And how do you communicate those?
Well, we just again started this pilot, so we although we communicate with them, I don't want to say we don't communicate with them, but we don't give them the pre-warnings because the system isn't totally built. So the pilot will tell us where we need to put them, where we need to put additional units in. Our commissioners have been very forward with us, saying whatever it costs to get this in and prevent damage, get it in there. It also helps to tell us if our pipes are starting to fill up with dirt because of all the debris off the city streets. Because slowly but surely the levels of water on a normal day will be higher. So it's a good predictive maintenance for ourselves also. But we will be communicating. In fact, we'll be so communicative, we'll put one of the devices inside their office so they, as well as ourselves, can watch when this issue is going on.
So I'm thinking about this. Anything built in Boston must handle 1.5 inches, up to 1.5 inches. Are we going to raise that level of requirement? Like what 1.5 inches this summer? That was pretty much normal. Like we had 2 inches, we had 3/4 of an inch, and well, this might be a question for somebody else. But you know, how are we? And we totally understand that when we have a big storm, that the storm drains, there's no way that they're going to handle all the water. So, what sort of level are we trying to be in terms of like even green infrastructure, sort of be able to handle a little more? Have we got a target?
Right, so we have not changed our number, 1 inch for the smaller residentials, and then on the larger ones, BPDA has mandated 1.5 inches, so we've adopted that. We require that you be able to hold the volume of water of 1.5 inches. When it starts raining out, it doesn't generally rain real hard for a long time. It's maybe over 1 hour. We find that those things don't even fill up, the 1 inch. So you may get a 2-inch storm over one day and it never filled up, because as soon as the water hits that infiltration basin, it starts infiltrating. And the way they're developed and built, they work extremely well. So we continue to say 1 inch you need to hold, but in reality, you can handle almost up to 2 inches in most cases.
Yeah.
So it's very efficient the way it's working. And again, we're learning. We keep checking out what's going on at different locations. The one thing we do fear is we require a lot of infiltration underground. The fear is that if it starts raining in January and February when it gets really cold, and only we rely on surface features, that the first 6 inches of ground is going to be frozen solid, and we're going to have one gigantic impervious area across it, and it's all going to come to the storm drain system. So with our system, we're putting it in underground, downward, it won't freeze, and we're assured that it won't have a problem. But I think what the answer for the city is a combination. We have heat island problems. Mm-hmm. We have just the idea that neighborhoods look better when they're green rather than concrete. So something where underground we can store a volume of water, while up above we can have the natural heat island and all the benefits that come with, visual green infrastructure. Yeah. So I think the combination of the two is where we have to head.
Kate, do you have anything to say on that one?
Yeah, I agree with John's last point there that, green infrastructure is kind of used as a supplementary tool that helps to relieve pressure on the storm drain system. That by providing storage, whether it's through a surface feature like a rain garden or a bioswale, or providing, some kind of subsurface storage where water is able to pass through a permeable surface, porous asphalt or, pavers, and then enter a crushed stone area underground, that's water that's not getting into your storm drain system. And so for parts of the city, as you know, our storm drain system is very much connected across the city. So in parts of the city where we're able to remove volumes of water from our storm drain system, we're actually providing additional capacity within that pipe system for other neighborhoods to drain into it. Mm-hmm. So I view, kind of this complementary, installation of the green and the gray as the best way for us to, make the kind of localized neighborhood that you've installed the GI more resilient, but also to relieve some of the pressure on the pipe system. John has mentioned that it's not really possible for us to upsize, our storm drain system for, a 100-year storm event, for example. We do upsize a little bit as we do replacement, and I think that Boston Water and Sewer can speak more to that if that's of interest. But acknowledging that we're in a city and that we are limited into, in terms of what we can install in the kind of utility space underground, the additional kind of, again, I keep saying storage, but the additional space for water to go to that isn't in the storm drain system or maybe in, on a sidewalk or in somebody's basement is of value and should be part of every project that we do. So your initial question was, should we be considering upsizing increasing from 1 inch or 1.5 inches to a larger, volume? And other cities and towns have already moved to increase what they're requiring for infiltration. Some cities and towns use storm events as opposed to volume calculations. So it's worth considering in the city, what would be a reasonable, amount to increase our volume requirements, or maybe, switch to start using a storm event. I think that we've had these regulations in place for quite some time now, and so making these increases at this point, especially after the summer that we've just had, I don't think people are going to question why we're doing it. I think that people are like, oh, I saw the rain this summer, I'm seeing the flooding on the street on my property, I understand why we're looking to create more storage that relieves pressure on our storm drain system. So I'll stop there.
I think one of my concerns as well is that we're cutting down a lot of trees on private property, and a tree, a healthy tree, a fully mature tree will take 1,200 gallons of water out of the soil. So, we have to sort of come at it from all angles and educate our folks about the value of trees as well as the importance of all this other stuff that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
There's-
Madam Chair.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you so
I was going
much.
to say, I would encourage folks to go to the city's green infrastructure website, which it's boston.gov/green-infrastructure, as well as the Environment Department's websites. We have wonderful information about stormwater, green infrastructure, and tree canopy and the new tree alliance that we're building as well.
I think to your point, I think we're all have a great responsibility to educate as many people as possible about how important this is and how to build a resilient and sustainable city for everyone, no matter where we live, what neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. Councillor Durkin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. So I know we've touched on this a little bit. I recently attended a Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay meeting on Beacon Street, and it was a rainy night, and there was in order to get into a car, I had to jump over probably like I mentioned the skating, Glen, 3 or 4 feet of water, ended up still getting totally wet. So I know I bring this example up because this is our regular constituents' experience with storm water and with extra water on our streets. And it really does have, there's a safety aspect to it. And we're also talking about what infrastructure might end up on the streets. So right outside that Fisher College, which is where it was held, there's a proposed bike lane proposal. So obviously that's the lowest grade part in the street, which had around, having to jump over 4 feet of water in order to where a bike lane is proposed to go, is just something that is, something that we talk about when we talk about like city infrastructure and streets. So I want to thank NAB's leadership for being here, and I know they're planning to testify later. But I just wanted to bring that up because I know our system and our pipes are smaller than they should be, and maybe not able to be updated, are not modernized. So wanted to, John, ask you, and it's really nice to meet you in person. I know we've talked on the phone about multiple things happening in my district. Wanted to ask you where you think we could grow and where you think we could, so that, when there, just that question of there being water on the streets, why does that happen? How can we fix it? Or, and how can we modernize what we have in addition to the green infrastructure that we've been talking about?
Right. I don't want to give you the impression that all our pipes are old and undersized. Most of them are in great shape. During that March event, that was equivalent to a 100-year event, something you wouldn't expect to see for 100 years. And we got 30 complaints. So it works pretty good because it came at us nice and slow. It's the intensity that gets us in trouble. On city streets, any given rainstorm, we will get phone calls for, quote, a flood in the street. And what that is we call it ponding because it's so much gentler. The water either can't get to the catch basin because of the roadway. The roadway has to be pitched properly. And with all the excavations we do in the city street, there's dips and divots everywhere. Or the catch basin itself isn't working. So the catch basins are cleaned. We try to get for a frequency once a year. There's a 4-foot deep sump in those things. So you can collect a 4-foot diameter hole with 4 feet of debris before we've seen any problems at all. So it'll either be a clogged catch basin or the city needs to come out and redo something with the street to pitch it to get it to us. And hopefully that puddle was not 4 feet deep, but it was 4 feet wide, because I'd be really troubled if we had something that bad in the city. But in general, anything that comes up, all 311s, we respond to every one of them, and we make the repairs. There are 30,000 catch basins in the city.
Could you walk me through, if a resident sees something like this, what they're supposed to do, and obviously probably report it to 311, but what the process would be for rectifying like a catch basin and how quickly that happens?
Well, all they have to do is tell us where the problem is. It's extremely important that they give us their name and phone number so we can get back to them. Many of our calls are concerned citizen. And so we put it on a list. If we have the phone number and we can't get to it for a reason, if there's a reason that there's another utility in our way, that the pipe leading from the basin to the main pipe is broken, we'd like to get back and say it's going to take us a little longer than we thought. But just call us. It's we have eyes and ears out there. You know, we're about 500 strong, a lot of them working in the water division. We're not everywhere. And so if we get the complaints, we will get out and fix them.
Thank you. And given the relationship you described with the Boston Water and Sewer Commission with the city, what improvements can we make to coordination, or do you feel like there are improvements needed to coordination between, as we are leading this green, New Deal, green infrastructure program, and I know you've been here for so long, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think the coordination is excellent. In the whole planning process, the city just put out a job on Cummings Highway. We must have had 15 meetings on it, back and forth, what we could live with, what they need, what their needs were, and how do we accomplish the entire thing. Public Works and ourselves speak all the time. We're poking holes in the streets everywhere. And when we get complaints about drainage not working right, we get it over to them.
Okay, and I guess I'll send you an email about Beacon Street after I get out of this hearing.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. And then to our Director of Green Infrastructure, Kate England, I as someone who was just encouraged and has worked on a lot of the campaigns of people who care about the Green New Deal and green infrastructure, and now as a city councilor, was extremely excited about your hire and excited to see what the city's doing in terms of green infrastructure. What are the ways in which you think we could create greater awareness for the general public about how they can be supportive? I know we've talked a little bit about this offline, about how there are groups involved, in, especially in my neighborhoods, who work on watering trees, who do a lot of good. How can we, create that awareness and coordination between groups that care about these things in neighborhoods?
Yeah, that's great. So we're currently piloting a green infrastructure volunteer program. We selected a couple of sites, 3 sites actually, 2 in Dorchester and 1 in Roxbury, to essentially allow a neighborhood group that cares about the area to adopt a green infrastructure feature in that neighborhood, and in addition to just having their eyes on it and having that kind of direct communication with my office if there's something that needs to be reported, if there's something that's broken or something that's blocked that they can't fix. We're also providing educational resources, maintenance guides, how to identify a weed, as well as like physical equipment, so high-vis vests, trash pickers, buckets, and leaf bags and trash bags and all those things. And the neighborhood has essentially been empowered to go out and help out with removing litter and things and weeds and stuff like that from our surface green infrastructure features. And so in addition to, to John's point and to everybody's point about green infrastructure really needing maintenance, and really appreciating the help that the community can provide in that sense, kind of the overarching goal of the program is to allow the community to feel that sense of pride and participation and ownership, of these features. And we have an approved plant list, and so folks are allowed to plant. They're also allowed to request plants from us that we'll provide and that they can plant. And so, like I said, we're piloting this program this fall and winter, and then we're opening it citywide in the spring of next year. And so volunteer groups, even individuals, you don't have to be part of like a neighborhood group, will be able to use a map viewer to locate the green infrastructure near where they live, work, and play, and request to adopt it. And then the city will provide training resources, all the equipment that I just mentioned, and then our volunteers are able to, kind of be involved in the program directly. We've got a bunch of other fun things. We do events, green infrastructure job mixers. I do a lot of work with Power Corps and like our wonderful programs. The idea here is to really make this a community-led program. Peer cities across the country have had their greatest success with these programs when the public has been directly involved. And we see this as an opportunity to build a green economy, to build, this kind of job pipeline around green infrastructure, so that as we are increasing our implementation and building more of it, we want our community members to be the ones building it, to be the ones helping to maintain it, to win the contracts from the city, to, have our money be invested directly into the communities, where we're building these projects. So that's happening, and we're really excited about that. We're hoping lessons learned from the pilot this winter. We'll make some final tweaks and then launch it for everybody in the spring. And then we're also doing a kind of a larger community outreach program where we're trying to get some of the Power Corps folks to stay on a couple of extra months and help us do some community organizing and do events and, you know, teach your friends and family about green infrastructure. So we'll talk more about that as it develops as well. So this is all the programmatic stuff, and then we're also like just building a bunch of stuff. And we have an RFP out right now to cite and prioritize locations across the city. The methodology for like how we're going to, you know, make our list and how we're going to prioritize it hasn't been determined yet because it's going to involve community process. You know, what are the most important characteristics to the people who live in the city in terms of where we do our first installations will all be part of the consultant's work. But the goal is to have a nice list of sites across the city where we can start physically implementing green infrastructure, you know, starting as early as next year. So we've been kind of restoring the green infrastructure that existed already, things that I worked on when I was at Boston Water and Sewer years ago, and things that others had put in place. And so we spent about a year and change you know, renovating green infrastructure features, replanting plants, like really getting them to a place where they're all kind of functioning now. And now I'm shifting my focus to building new stuff. So it's been a year and a half, but we're excited that the community seems to be so interested in this, and that you know, our features are starting to look nice. And I feel proud telling people, you know, here's a great example of green infrastructure in the city. There's a map on the green infrastructure website that has, it's called Visit Green Infrastructure. And it has like 15 or 20 locations in the city where there are beautiful features where people can just swing by and see them if they want to see what green infrastructure looks like in person. And so I was always wanting to do that, but was a little concerned that they didn't look great before, but now they look great and they're getting the love and the maintenance that they need.
That's incredibly exciting, and it's exciting to hear about community involvement because I don't want to call anyone out in this hearing by name, but in my own neighborhood, there are people who have dedicated themselves to clean up their block, have dedicated themselves to just being really involved. So I think it's not a surprise to me that up here are 3 district city councilors, because I feel like we are the closest to the people in terms of we know what's happening in our neighborhoods, and so I hope that you see us as a resource, and all of the council as a resource in fielding names of groups to reach out to, and also individuals, because we all are part of this. You know, we can list the people in our neighborhoods who are already doing this work and coming to us with ideas for green infrastructure. So I'm really excited about that, and to hear about that being launched. Also want to talk a little bit about, to the chief, about response to stormwater and flooding, and how we deal with individuals who, I know Councilor Laura mentioned something that happened in her district. Wanted to talk a little bit more about like what that, how you deal with people affected by stormwater and flooding, and what resources are available to residents, given our last panel and the discussion around what we could be doing more in the city.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. So I think first off, we approach each individual that's impacted or affected by any crisis the same, right? So whether they're impacted by fire or whether they're impacted by flood, we see them as a constituent, we see them as a resident, as a human that deserves and needs support. There have been instances where we have had community members that have been impacted by water, and we have worked across departments. Again, one of the main functions that OEM plays is to coordinate and to help and assist city departments with resources. So while a department may have a specific mandate for within the city's infrastructure, they may not have operational capacity. They may have subject matter expertise, but don't know how to go about, logistics and service delivery to a community. So we work consistently across departments to ensure that we connect them to different, not only in the city departments, but also with the private sector in furtherance of service delivery. When we think about some of the residents that we've seen that have been impacted by water, one of the things that we don't do when we go to scene, and Councilor Lara, I was just on your district last week at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's okay, because that's what we're charged with doing. But we don't leave the scene where we have individuals that have not been connected with appropriate city stakeholders to further service delivery. So the example that I point to, as of recently on your district, was an individual, families that were impacted by water, not ground up, not inundation, and certainly not coastal flooding, but nonetheless they were impacted by water from a broken water pipe that ultimately, flooded their apartments. Now, again, when you think about victimization, when you think about trauma, if it's happening to you, it's very real, regardless of where it came from. So just another example of, again, we get on scene, even if we're not the lead agency, which in most instances we're not, but we are that convening and that coordinating body. So we do work across departments to work to ensure they get the services to carry them forward. We've worked with water and sewer over the last year, where we've had individuals that were impacted by water in their basements. In many of them, their housing situation was going to be long-term impacted. And we did work with water and sewer and their resources to ensure that we were able to get them resources long-term.
Thank you. And I did get a heartbreaking, right when I joined the council in August, got a heartbreaking email from a constituent that had a small newborn baby who, and I know I think that I spoke with, I think I was emailing with your team, John, about what they could have done to prevent that happening. So wanted to talk a little bit more about sort of infrastructure-wise, since I'm not an infrastructure update, when people have backed up, what people can do to prevent, especially in garden level units, back up. And there was something I'm trying to remember the name of it that could have been installed to prevent the backup into their unit. And I don't know if that's a question for ISD as well, but.
Yeah, the units are called backwater valves. Yeah. It's to keep the water from coming back into your unit. And they're required to be on each individual fixture in the basement. And in that particular instance, they did have a backwater valve installed. And it appears that unfortunately somebody put it underground and cemented over it. So they couldn't even maintain it. Now these are notorious for clogging because it's waste going down the sewer, and they're little valves like our tide gates that we use, and they need to be maintained. And the problem is, if you maintain them 5 years in a row, you take it apart, it's fine, you tend to forget it. It's like everything else. And the only day you need it is the day that it's not maintained. And if it isn't shut completely, sewage from the street can actually come backwards into your property, and depending on how high the level of water in the sewer is, it can bubble out of your shower for sure. Comes out of your floor drains because they're connected to the same sewer, and they can put upwards of a foot to 2 feet of raw sewage, not all yours, in your basement. That then contaminates the drywall. It requires massive cleanup, but most likely relocation of the people, and then they go put in new backwater valves, and then the process starts again. So this is anybody that's living below street level is required to put these in. And if they're in, you buy a brand new unit, you're all happy because the walls are pretty, the lights are beautiful and everything, and you're all happy. Last thing you're thinking about is cleaning the backwater valve. And so each year, there'll be in your water bills, which you all get once a month, you have a little brochure telling you about backwater valves and why it's important. And we do what we can to promote it. We do it in neighborhood meetings. We tell people all the time. But until it hits you, it doesn't really impact you. You don't understand it.
Well, and just adding to that, I think for my district and all of our districts, making sure that the awareness is there and that the awareness, we have neighborhood newsletters that go out over and over again where I haven't really seen this yet noticed. So I, as a district city councilor, I'm going to encourage this to be something that's talked about. Given how many emails I've gotten from constituents, really, I'm only a few months in, how many emails I've gotten and heartbreaking stories. In regards to the ISD component of this, how can we ensure that that these are maintained and obviously this is private property, but what kind of inspections go into making sure upon people moving into, and I just want to mention having Mission Hill, that a lot of students live in units that they don't know if are maintained when they come in. So just adding a little layer to that.
We have two different primary kinds of housing inspections that we do proactive inspections. Those are pre-scheduled and they are conducted on an annual basis on a 5-year program. We also conduct reactive inspections, so those are complaint-based inspections. So when there is an issue, we will respond to it. So we can kind of go with the proactive inspections is to reduce the number of complaint-based inspections that we have to do. But often that's not the case yet, but both those inspections happen.
Can we, as counselors, encourage certain areas to have ISD inspections, given emails we've gotten from constituents?
You can absolutely encourage.
Okay, thank you. I'll give this back to the chair.
Thank you so much, Councilor Durkin. And I am going to move forward with my questions, and then I'll go to a second round of questions for the sponsors if they have them, and if not, we'll move to our closing statements before we do public testimony, just giving you an update based on the time and where we are. Thank you all so much for all of your work and all of your answers. Chief Benford, so it's my understanding that for emergency management, from what you've shared here during the hearing, a lot of your role is in responding to both coastal and localized flooding to individual residents. Is there any work that emergency management does to prevent or help prepare people for flooding?
Sure. So, our plans, as I mentioned, are informed by departments. Hazard mitigation as an example. And one of the things that we're looking at, from our own experiences is around, again, how do we create third-party advocates and the very people and communities that we serve. So we do have an outreach component to the work that we're doing, but we are not the lead agency in many of these areas, right? We respond and we support and we coordinate. So if you look at our base emergency plans and our annexes, you will find that depending upon what the crisis is, 99% of the time, another city agency is the lead agency, with OEM as well as other city departments being a support agency.
So the idea of doing constituent education and preparedness and advocacy, or even awareness around localized flooding, would that live in your department? Is that something that can be added to the pamphlets or things that could be passed out when we're talking about emergency preparedness? Is this something that would be included in your work?
Sure. There is no question that we can be a stakeholder in helping to spread that message. And again, we would live off of and feed off of the subject matter experts in the departments with what the appropriate information is to share, in the appropriate format and venue to share it in. But no doubt about it, we could be a stakeholder in sharing that information for sure.
Okay, thank you so much. That's incredibly helpful when we're thinking about where to localize it. It seems like it would be collaboration between water and sewer, green stormwater infrastructure to kind of create something collectively, or even having, now I just went to the event that you had in English High School. Is there a table there usually for the Boston Water and Sewer Commission?
Absolutely. They've been a consistent partner.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. My next question is going to be for Mr. Sullivan and Director England, collectively or separately, however you want to answer it. First off, Mr. Sullivan, 51 years. Thank you for all of your service. It takes a lot of commitment to be a public servant for that long, and if we do not cross paths, I hope that your retirement is restful. But I wanted to say thank you because 51 years is a long time.
Well, it's not scheduled yet.
No, well, no, hold on, don't go now. That was not an encouragement. Yeah, we definitely.
You have to stay forever, so.
But I was just, when you introduced yourself and said you've been around for 51 years, I was just wanted to thank you. This is mostly about collaboration. So there are a number of things. There was a question about increasing capacity. And we got a response from the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. We got a response from Director England. One of them was the 1 to 1.5 inch requirement is working because it's actually up to, more so about 2 inches. And so we feel like maybe we're okay in that requirement. And then if please correct me if I am misunderstanding your response, we heard from Director England that there are opportunities for the city to look at increasing our capacity. So that's the first one. The second one is specifically around our balance between gray infrastructure and green infrastructure. And my question is mostly about how do we strike the balance? What is the perfect percentage for our pipes? What level of green stormwater infrastructure can balance out with gray stormwater infrastructure? And so the reason why I say that this question is for both of you is because I think that both of those answers, it's going to require that we come to an agreement, whether you're on different ends of what we think we should do right now. And so I'm curious if there's been any development in creating something that is cohesive and agreed upon between the Boston Water and Sewer Commission and the City of Boston's green stormwater infrastructure in terms of what is the balance? What can we do based on, institutional knowledge? What can't we do? Maybe we go up to 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and then that maybe means that we can take 2.5, and so on and so forth. So I'm just curious about where the overlap and agreement is on what we are doing and what interventions we're implementing, particularly around balancing green stormwater infrastructure, our pipes and our capacities, and what goes where, and increasing the capacity of our basins, if I'm remembering that correctly.
So I'll jump the gate first.
Yeah.
80% of the storms we have here in the city, historically and even currently, are less than 1 inch and less.
Yeah.
So it's the 20% we got to worry about. And we actually take a lot of water if it takes over a long time. That's the reason we do volume. Now, we look at the infiltration basins that we build as green infrastructure. Mm-hmm. You can't see them. We don't paint them green. They're generally yellow. But they act by taking water and restoring them back to the natural balance of having water go in the ground, get purified, bacteria is removed, the nutrients are removed. Mm-hmm. And so it's very much a green infrastructure treatment. It doesn't have the visual part of the green infrastructure. It doesn't help with the heat island at all, what we require. That's what we call our minimum. And by the way, on our website, we have for homeowners a manual showing them all the types of green infrastructure, how to do it, and we're producing another manual saying if you pick one of these, you better take a look at how much it takes to maintain it. So pick the right thing for your property. We do encourage people, you should use something like a rain garden, but many of these things are done on lots where they're trying to maximize space. We have in East Boston, people put their green infrastructure infiltration basements in the cellar. They're underneath the basement floor. That's where they go, because there's no land at all. So we could either not doing anything, and we consider that quite green, because that stormwater, which is polluted, gets purified naturally. So that's where we sit on it. We have other devices we did build, and when Kate was at the commission, at public schools. We built 5 public schools. We built green infrastructure, the visual part, and in one of them, the Washington Irving, we have one part that's gray infrastructure and one part that's just green. So we are not against what is traditionally known as a green infrastructure. But let me tell you, when it's raining 8 inches of water and it's coming down at the rate of 2 inches an hour, you better have either gigantic ponds or storage detention facilities or pipes to move the water, or else the storage for that rainwater becomes basements. So there is a need, not one or the other one does. Philadelphia is known as the city with the green infrastructure. And now what they're looking at pipes, because it needs both. It's not one or the other. So that's where the balance is.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sullivan. Director Chamberlain.
For clarity, Philadelphia did do green infrastructure first
They
to
did.
reduce the size of the pipe they had to build. So meaning slightly, well, actually the reversed approach from what we did here. So I will say that there are lots of really great examples of peer cities out there that have, really kind of laudable, thriving programs that are either run out of their water department as a department at the city, or run in collaboration with an external water department that, similar to the commission, is not technically a city department. So there's lots of good examples out there for us to look to how to do this work, in a way that's kind of tried and, we can learn from what has been done. So I think that my general feelings about this is, and John explained it really nicely, that 80% of the storms that we've seen historically and today are an inch or less. But I'm not thinking about today or yesterday. I need to be thinking about 20 years from now, because when we do infrastructure construction in the city of Boston, we, when we do a roadway reconstruction, we're not coming back to it in 5 years. We're going to come back to it in 20 years, or some other time scale. And so when we are thinking about, the same goes for the construction on a private property. if you are doing a major construction project at your home, you are probably not coming back in a couple of years to do it again. So what we are designing needs to be forward-looking. We need to be thinking about, what are the storms going to look like tomorrow, 20 years from now, which is within the life of that piece of infrastructure that you just built. So I think that the city and the commission is having dialogue now that we hadn't been having historically around, what do we want this complement of green and gray to look like? And, the commission has requirements as well where they also need to be implementing green infrastructure, and I know that they will have their own, kind of plans and approach for that work. But when it comes to the collaborative work that's being done between the city and the commission, I don't think we have an answer yet about, the percentage, if you will, of what should be green versus gray. But I think that we're getting to a place of alignment where we're understanding that the green has to be in there in a meaningful way, and in a way that it kind of historically hasn't been. I can't remember who mentioned the Tremont Street project. I think it might have been Emily, but the Tremont Street project example was a perfect one, right? It's a major reconstruction project that the city did that, with a really healthy cooperation with Boston Water and Sewer and the city, we could have done a lot of great work there, but we just weren't having the conversations yet. And so now that we're actually now that I'm pestering everybody about it, but now that I'm here to kind of advocate for this, the Cummins Highway project that John mentioned does have some very comprehensive green infrastructure in it. And so I think that the short answer, because that was really long-winded, is we don't have a percentage yet. I'm not sure if there is a quote-unquote right answer for that, but I think that the understanding that the green has to be given the same weight, as gray has been given historically, is also there now. So I think we probably have some work to do, city and commission together, and I think we acknowledge that, and I think we're moving forward.
Thank you so
John,
much.
Do you agree?
I think one great example of the combined is the ERC over in Brighton, where rather than take the 1 inch or inch and a half, they're in the 2.5 inch range, and they have the park space. They realize they need that. That's when you get gigantic open spaces. What I'm mostly speaking about is people trying to jam another 3-family home into a 6,000 square foot lot, and how do we get that done? We have over 2,000 of these installations across the city. Most of them were done in the G-Card areas to begin with, but we only get a bite at the apple when someone wants to rebuild a house or home, and that's a problem. Because we can't go to someone who has existing and tell them. Now, whether a 30% credit on a stormwater fee, whether you get a whole $3 a month back, is it worth investing $6,000 to put in a green infrastructure because you're going to save the planet, is going to be challenging, to say the least. So there may be opportunities for grants to help people understand how to do this where they're cost effective.
Thank you so much. That is incredibly encouraging, as you all know. I think the collaboration piece of it and the getting on the same page about what green and gray, the balance between green and gray, was a big sticking point when we had this hearing last. And so it's encouraging to hear from both of you that we're moving in a direction where there's some collective commitment to making sure that we get the numbers. And I think the conversation about the grants is a really good segue. I know that there are federal funds through ARPA and the EPA that are being made available for green stormwater infrastructure. How is the city taking advantage of these grants? And more specifically, is there any opportunity to use federal funds for the creation of this kind of parametric insurance pilot or flooding insurance that might help our residents protect themselves?
Yes, short answer is yes. But the city is currently focusing on federal funding for city infrastructure projects, but we have started looking at how do we create a grant program for the public. I know I keep using the word pilot, but I didn't have a budget until this year, so we're piloting a smaller version of a grant program this spring, where we will be providing funds to a number, I'm not sure how many yet, of projects in the city that are private property owners who will apply, or nonprofit institutions or whomever who will apply and will receive funding to build green infrastructure on their properties. There is also some funding that's going to be available through the Commission's stormwater fee as well, and those I think are specifically directed at residents, and they're smaller dollar amounts, but like I said, I think the Commission is hoping to maximize impact by reaching as many residents as possible. I am not as familiar with the grant structure that we heard about during the testimony from the advocates, so I will do some research on that one and see if it's possible that if the city could be a pass-through entity, or if there are other methods that are working elsewhere that we could potentially implement here, but there's definitely some desire on the city side to make these funds available to the public, because we do acknowledge that, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head, so I'm not even going to guess, but a huge portion of the land in the city is privately owned, and for us to really make the difference that we need to in terms of stormwater management, the public has to be actively involved and really working with us. So, short answer, Councilor Laura, I will get back to you. I will look into it too.
Thank you so much. I think particularly in the conversation around affordable flood insurance for residents, particularly people who live in environmental justice neighborhoods, the strain on our operating budget to really create new programming, if that can be somehow alleviated by using federal funds, I think that we have a better chance of moving something quicker through the city. And, you know, keep the pilots coming. I think pilots are iterative processes. You learn from them, you make them permanent. So as many pilots and experiments as necessary to make sure that we get this right. So really thankful for that. And my last question is for Mr. English. We have the proactive rental inspection program. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the specifics of what the inspection looks like, but do we have any, on the inspection form, when folks are going into the apartments, do we have any check boxes for use of flood resistant strategies that are being used? So when we go into an apartment, are we saying, hey, what are you using to, I think specifically for homes and apartments that are in these areas where they have a high risk of flooding, when we're doing apartment inspections, are we checking for this?
That I don't know, but I can find out.
Thank you so much. And I think if we're not going through a process and continuing a conversation with ISD to update the inspection document, to update the paper, to make sure that we're checking for these flood resistant strategies, specifically because, as Mr. Sullivan mentioned, maybe a lot of people don't know. Maybe they don't know if it's being upkept and so on, the pipes. And so it would be beneficial, given that we already have this infrastructure set up for checking our rental units, that we are also checking on the availability or the use of flood resistant strategies by landlords. That is all that I have. I am going to go to the original sponsors for either final questions or closing statements, and then we're going to move on to our public testimony. Thank you all so much for being here. Councillor Breeden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to swing back to John again and ask about the storage capacity that in natural areas. You mentioned the Arboretum, and you also mentioned historically that in days gone by our parks had depressions that were flooded in the wintertime, and we had skating available. Are we looking at that capacity across the system and in our park system? Like, I know your Boston Water and Sewer Parks is a different department. You know, are we looking at those? Because I know in Alston, Brighton, I told you we had historically 19 ponds in the neighbourhood. We've got one right now as a catch basin potential catch basin for stormwater. I'm just thinking, what are we thinking about that option?
We did a preliminary. We have a study that we did preliminary. We found 10 locations that are very large. At George Wright Golf Course, we could store a lot of water up there. They could use it for watering their lawns, and it would be a win-win. In several other parks, but this was a quick once through. We're redoing our models. Once the models are done and that inundation study I referred to starts, that'll show us where we need to store water, where there's places we have to take it offline. Mm-hmm. Then we'll concentrate on what's going on. Harambee Park in Dorchester is a great example of a huge area that's depressed. We could store several acre feet of water there. Canterbury Brook, there's wetlands there. If we did a little modification, we could store it. And when I say store water, we're talking about a day or two as the storm passes. This isn't flooding it permanently. This is just temporary storage. Put it somewhere where it won't harm. It's natural. And if we had the responsibility to clean it up afterwards, we could clean it up, because stormwater has trash in it. So there would be some type of cleanup. But we're not ready yet, but we will be getting there. It's on the agenda of things that we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm really encouraged by the conversation this morning. I think we've got some big challenges. but it's really good to know that our advocates and our city and the Boston Water and Sewer, everybody is bringing their best thinking to this to try and come up with solutions. And John, I also have to say thank you for your service, 51 years. There's an incredible amount of institutional memory and experience there, and I really value that. And thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work. And hopefully you're going to keep with us for a while and not go and retire on us too soon.
And please don't think I favor gray infrastructure because of the color of my hair. I didn't dye it green today. Next time I'll.
Thank you. And, I'm encouraged. Thank you, Madam Chair, for chairing this hearing, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I hope that we can keep at it and keep it moving forward. And I pledge my support and commitment to trying to bring up forward as many solutions as we can possibly manage. And also to your point, Kate, about just in community engagement and having community ownership of these spaces and keeping up our green infrastructure and taking care of our trees and planting more trees. All of it. I think it has to be a multi-dimensional process that we all work on together to make our city more resilient for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. Councillor Durkin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm grateful for your leadership on this subject and grateful to Councillor Liz Braden for her leadership and for asking me to sign on as someone who cares deeply about what our city can be doing to create green infrastructure, what our city can be doing to manage the stormwater and flooding for our residents. I want to thank our administration panel for being here. I also want to give a shout out to the Groundwater Trust and Emily Norton for being here, and the Metro Area Planning Council. I really appreciate your testimony. I really count myself as a student of this. I've just started on the City Council, so this is something that I am really excited and to work on. But I do need to mention the urgency of this. There is not a way for the City of Boston to not be behind on this because of where we are in terms of climate change and the existential crisis of climate change. So as we have these very nuanced conversations, I just want to bring it back to that level of urgency because our residents deserve a city that approaches it with that level of urgency. And so I want to thank too our mayor for being a leader on this and being a Green New Deal mayor and one that approaches this topic with a sense of urgency. But we can't be doing enough interdepartmentally to make sure that every single agency of our city knows this is a priority. And I go back to something that Emily Norton said around not living up to the Clean Water Act of 1972. That to me, I actually wrote one of my first, as a high school student, wrote one of my first letters ever to my congressman about voting to renew the Clean Water Act. So this just feels like, and for me, I've had a lifelong commitment to these issues, starting in high school, caring about this stuff, and but knowing that we have the experts and tools at our fingertips to really solve this issue with a sense of urgency, I'm excited by the chief's comments about what we do for our residents in times of emergency. So I just want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for putting Boston on the map as a city that's going to lead on this. But I'm also concerned for the folks that don't have the time to be here, don't have the time to engage in this conversation, because I think when we talked about the equity piece of this and the conversation around who will be most directly impacted, those are not the people who have time to show up for this conversation, and potentially not the people who have time to make sure that their basement units infrastructure is maintained. So whatever we can be doing infrastructure-wise and grant-wise to make sure that our citizens have access to the resources that they need to maintain their infrastructure, and then piling on top of that, awareness campaigns. Those are the things that I want to see coming out of this hearing and moving forward, is just people having access to the resources and access to the awareness resources. So thank you to John Sullivan for mentioning that those resources are available on the website. I'm planning to re-up my commitment to share those with neighborhood leaders so that they have those resources. And I really see this as an ongoing conversation because this is a threat to our infrastructure, to our city residents, and to their property. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Durkin. Thank you all for all of your hard work. This is an incredibly important conversation. During my tenure here and as the chair of this committee, we've been able to make this a yearly conversation, and so please consider this my invitation to the incoming chair of this committee that we continue making sure that we're checking up on how we're doing when it comes to green stormwater infrastructure, and my office will be following up on a number of actions and things that we can get done in the next couple of months. I am really encouraged by everything that we've been able to accomplish in the last year, and onward from here. So we are going to move on to public testimony. I'm going to start with the two people that are on Zoom, but I want the folks who are going to testify in person. I have Marty Router, who is here from NAB. Martin, there you go, Martin Roeder, and June Lee. Did I have that?
I think Martin Roeder might no longer be here, but he did have a letter.
Great, we have that. Okay, so Martin Roeder left a letter. We have that on the record, and the councilors will definitely be receiving that. Is Jung Lee here with us in person? No? Okay, great. So we will move on to Zoom testimony. We have Diane Valle and Steve Hollinger. And if they are both with us, we can start with Diane. Diane and Steve, please introduce yourself for the record before you start your testimony and your neighborhood. We typically give people about 2 minutes for public testimony, but because it's just the two of you, I will be lenient and allow you to finish up your commentary. It looks like Steve is prepared to go. Steve, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Steve Hollinger. I live in the Fort Point neighborhood. I want to thank the chair, Lara, and the sponsors, Breeden and Durkin. I also want to thank Chief Sullivan and Director England for great communications in our neighborhood and great work, long history of work. I also recommend people see the movie Inundation District, which I saw last night. And in the film, you'll hear someone say, if we knew then what we know now, to kind of explain the decision making. I'd like to make some recommendations. I've been recommending for many, many years that developers building in flood zones, I'm talking about large projects, in flood zones should be contributing to anticipated large-scale mitigation projects. And that goes far above and beyond what will be collected under that stormwater fee. BPDA has a pilot in the Marine Park, but BPDA's pilot is where BPDA pays for the project in advance and then is expected in some future year to collect from the developers that have already built projects. And those developers don't have to contribute until 50% are on board. You can do some fact checking on that, but those are all loopholes that make it hard for me to believe that those projects will be funded privately. Land use planning at BPDA, I think, needs to be much better connected to this issue. You'll note that the BPDA resiliency guidelines, 1 month before BPDA board approved them, BPDA deleted a prohibition on below-grade parking garages in residential projects that had been in those guidelines for a year. And a very well-informed friend told me that's because pressure from developers. Same thing with parks. If you look at the parks, for example, in the Seaport, I recommend you look closely at the amount of impervious surface and parks, and those decisions have been made right up until last year in terms of park sizes. One park did increase in size, but that's simply by removing a building that BPDA had approved on the park. As far as stormwater management, I think I agree with the notion that the management standards have to be increased beyond 1.5 inches, far beyond that, based on projections of frequency and frequency and volume of stormwater, and also just based on that saying, if we knew then what we know now, we're going to hear worsening and worsening numbers. We know that, so let's plan way in advance and increase those numbers. I also think that, well, I want to mention the 4-point channel CSOs, add that onto your list of problem areas where sewage is flowing into the 4-point channel, and I think I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks for your time and appreciate this hearing.
Thank you so much, Steve, for your testimony. You came in at 2 minutes exactly. Very grateful for that. No, the alarm didn't even go off. So that's all that we have. The person who is going to give public testimony on Zoom unfortunately has left us, so I want to thank you all for being so patient, for those that stuck around. This hearing of the Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks regarding docket number 1385 is now adjourned.